Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. The hidden demon lord, the Empress brought her baby to the door and begged for responsibility. Chapter 1. The Demon Forest. In the forest surrounded by towering mountains, a wooden house standing in the vast forest is particularly eye-catching. In the courtyard, Ning Yechen was lying on a rocking chair wearing homemade sunglasses, holding a glass of freshly squeezed fairy juice in his hand, looking lazy and comfortable. With the rocking chair rocking gently, you can enjoy the sun bath comfortably. This is life. I sleep until I wake up naturally every day, with no one to disturb me, no need to go to school or work, and no need to fight or kill. When you are hungry, eat the fairy fruits, herbs and elixirs you grow yourself. If you have nothing to do, you can also go fishing for the fish you keep in the lake. Live a happy and worry-free life. Compared with fighting and killing every day and going to various sports venues before, he still yearned for days like this. The only fly in the ointment is that I have lived here alone for more than 100 years, and I do feel a bit bored. There are no mobile phones in this world, and there are no means of entertainment. Repeating the same routine every day will make you a little tired of it after 100 years. Although there are a few guys who can talk to him, they are afraid that he will die, and it is not interesting at all. This made Ning Yechen couldn't help but recall the beautiful dream 10 years ago. In the past 10 years, whenever he was bored, he couldn't help but think of that night. The growth that night was deeply engraved in his mind, making it difficult for him to forget. Could it be that he has been single for hundreds of years and is lonely? Ning Yechen couldn't help but guess this. Otherwise, it would be hard to explain why he couldn't help but think back to that night recently. At that time, he just wanted to save the woman's life and didn't want to disturb his secluded life, so he didn't think much about it. This time it made him never forget it. But he doesn't even know the other person's name, and he probably won't see him again in the future. Ning Yechen shook his head, discarded the distracting thoughts in his heart and closed his eyes. Now that you have decided to live in seclusion, don't think about it so much. At this moment, Ning Yechen suddenly opened his eyes again. Somebody is coming. His consciousness clearly felt no, it was two figures walking towards him. How could someone come here? It's really rare. Interesting. He had been hiding here for hundreds of years, and was broken into by that woman only 10 years ago. Apart from this, no one has ever found this place again. As if Ning Yechen had discovered something interesting, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, he clapped his hands, and the barrier surrounding the wooden house immediately dissipated. He wanted to see what the other party was here for. In the dense woods, a woman with exquisite figure, graceful figure and charming face was walking slowly in the woods. The woman's face was a little pale and she looked tired. On her back was a little girl who was only 3 or 4 years old, with a delicate face as cute and beautiful as a doll. The little girl had long, beautiful black hair, a baby fat little face, and delicate facial features. She looked around the woods curiously with big bright eyes, and asked the woman in a waxing voice. "Mom, where are we going? Didn't Yi say that she wanted to see Dad? Mom will take you to find your father." Luo Ruiying turned around with a gentle and loving smile and said to the little girl on her back, her daughter. Although there was a kind and loving smile on his face, there was a trace of sadness and worry in his eyes. 10 years later, she never thought that one day she would fall into the human world again with her child to look for the person from that night. The strange thing is that she walked for so long relying on her memory and wandered around for a long time, but she couldn't find the wooden house. Has he already left? Right, for a mortal, 10 years is already a long time. He may have moved away from here long ago, and maybe he is married somewhere. Thinking of this, Luo Ruiying's sorrowful heart could no longer be concealed on her face. What would she do if she couldn't find him? Really? Mom, do you want to take Ye to find Daddy? When Luo Hongye heard that Luo Ruiying was going to take her to find her father, she immediately became extremely happy. She immediately put herself in front of her face and asked repeatedly. Yeah, go find Daddy. Seeing that the child was so happy, Luo Ruiying couldn't bear to destroy her fantasy and laughed in agreement. In her heart, she was not sure whether she could find Ning Yechen. After Luo Hongye was happy, big questions arose in her little head. She lay on her back and tilted her head and asked. Mom, didn't you say that Dad died when Yi was born? Forehead. Luo Ruiying was speechless for a moment and didn't know how to answer. After Luo Hongye became sensible, she would often drag her to ask her where her father was. Luo Ruiying lied to her that her father unfortunately passed away when she was born. Now he suddenly said that he would take her to find her father, which is indeed a bit strange. Yay, actually, your father is not dead yet. Luo Ruiying thought so hard that she could only think of such an excuse to explain. Luo Hongye blinked Kazilan's big eyes, and actually believed Luo Ruiying's words, and asked innocently and cutely. That means daddy is still alive, right mother? Yes, that's right. Luo Ruiying nodded quickly and responded. I thought I could just get through it like this, but I didn't expect Luo Hongye to continue asking. Then why hasn't dad come to find Yi and mother? Does dad not want to have with mom every night? As she said that, Luo Hongye's eyes turned red, and crystal tears rolled in her eyes. Luo Ruiying was startled and quickly hugged Luo Hongye from her back into her arms, patted her back and coaxed. No, Yi, how could your father not want you? He was actually seriously injured and has been hiding here to recover. I don't tell Yi because I'm afraid Yi will worry me. This is already the most suitable excuse Luo Ruiying can find. She couldn't tell her that her father actually didn't even know about her. Luo Hongye had no doubts about Luo Ruiying's words and immediately stopped crying, her face full of worry. Isn't it okay, Dad? It's okay. Luo Ruiying smiled slightly. At this moment, Luo Ruiying suddenly stopped, her expression became extremely serious, and her sharp eyes surrounded the forest. It smells like a monster. And the breath doesn't seem to be weak. When she came here 10 years ago, she didn't notice that there was actually the aura of powerful monsters here. In her current state, I wonder if she can handle it. Luo Ruiying hugged Luo Hongye tightly in her arms with one hand, and touched the fairy sword at her waist with the other hand, ready to respond to a surprise attack at any time. However, the next second, the vague aura of the monster beasts all around suddenly dissipated, as if they were running away in all directions, and disappeared without a trace. Why has the breath disappeared? Could it be that he sensed her aura and was afraid? Just when Luo Ruiying was confused, an exquisite wooden house suddenly appeared not far away from her eyes. Strangeness. She hadn't noticed there was a wooden house there just now, it seemed like it appeared out of thin air. Although Luo Ruiying was full of doubts, when she saw the wooden house in her memory, she couldn't help but reveal a happy smile on her face. Found it. Right here. Luo Ruiying carried Luo Hongye to the wooden house and gently knocked on the door with mixed feelings of uneasiness. With a squeak sound, the wooden door was slowly opened. Who is this girl looking for? Ning Yechen asked with a smile while standing at the door. For some reason, looking at the woman in front of me, I couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. Looking at the face in memory in front of her, Luo Ruiying pursed her red lips slightly, lowered her eyebrows, and for a moment she didn't know how to speak. After hesitating for a moment, he tentatively opened his lips and asked. Don't you remember me? Ning Yechen looked at the girl carefully again. Dark hair, red eyes, beautiful face. Very familiar. But I just can't remember who she is. He had seen so many beauties that he couldn't even remember who she was. Moreover, he has been hiding here for a long time, so no one should know about it. Girl, who are you? After thinking for a long time, Ning Yechen could only ask awkwardly after comparing them one by one in his mind and finding no suitable candidates. When Luo Ruiying saw that Ning Chengli really didn't recognize her, she couldn't help but have a look of anger and disappointment on her face, and she couldn't help but scolded in a sweet voice. You heartless man. Not to mention the fact that her first time was taken away from her, she went through all kinds of hardships to keep this child. Now she finally escaped from the fairy world and came to see him specially, but he didn't recognize her at all. She knew that perhaps for mortals, 10 years might be enough time to forget many things. But she couldn't help but feel disappointed and angry about Ning Yechen's behavior of forgetting her completely. Ning Yechen was stunned for a moment by the scolding. To be honest, in the hundreds of years since he traveled to this world and became the peerless demon king in the demon world, he has not even been in love, so how can he become a heartless man? How outrageous. Defamation. Outright slander. Girl, is there any misunderstanding between us? Did you admit the wrong person? Ning Yechen asked again. He felt that the woman in front of him must have recognized the wrong person. Luo Ruiying saw that Ning Yechen seemed to really not remember her, so she sighed in disappointment, picked up Luo Hongye in her arms, glanced at him resentfully, and said, "She is your daughter, you are responsible for me and her." Ning Yechen was shocked. This news is so exciting. He is suddenly inexplicably happy to be a father. Ning Yechen lowered his head and looked at Luo Hongye, who was as delicate as a doll, a little timid but kept looking at him secretly. The little girl was very beautiful and cute, and she had an inexplicable sense of closeness and familiarity. He liked her very much at first sight. But this suddenly told him that it was his child, and he was confused for a moment. Except for the one-night stand that happened by accident 10 years ago, he has never touched any woman at all. Thinking of this, Ning Yechen suddenly understood something, pointed at Luo Ruiying and asked in surprise. You are the fairy that night." Seeing that Ning Yechen finally remembered, Luo Ruiying nodded shyly. After receiving the affirmative answer, Ning Yechen opened his mouth in surprise. "No, it's really her." The cultivation aura on Luo Ruiying's body was much weaker than before, and it was completely on 2 different levels. The once beautiful silver hair had turned into dark hair, so much so that he couldn't recall it even after thinking about it for a long time. There was no overlap between her and the woman that night. Ning Yechen really couldn't understand. After a one-night stand, the former fairy brought the baby here 10 years later and held him responsible. A majestic fairy from the fairy world, with her cultivation, she might even be a saint or empress of a certain holy land, but she wants to come to the human world to find him. What makes him even more confused is that the higher the cultivation level, the smaller the probability of conceiving a fairy fetus. This is common sense known to the world. In order to be able to conceive a fairy fetus, some immortals even work hard every day with multiple immortal couples for several years before they have a harvest. Why did he fall into the spirit immediately? Even so, as a monk, as long as you are willing, you can use your immortal power to prevent the conception of an immortal fetus in your body at any time. He thought that after that night, Luo Ruiying would definitely avoid becoming pregnant with a fairy child. After all, she is a fairy from the fairy world and generally cannot give birth to a fairy fetus easily. It turned out that she really conceived the fairy child for several years, and also gave birth to the child and raised it. Is she really my child? Ning Yechen still asked in disbelief. He just asked casually to confirm, but he already knew it in his heart. However, Ning Yechen immediately regretted this casual question. It seems inappropriate to ask this. Sure enough, when she heard Ning Yechen's words, Luo Ruiying immediately frowned, her face turned extremely ugly, she gritted her teeth and shouted angrily. HMPH. If you don't want to take responsibility, I will just take the child and leave. But don't insult me and the child. After saying that, Luo Ruiying turned around and left without hesitation, with a flash of crystal tears in her eyes. Luo Hongye lay on Luo Ruiying's shoulder, still staring closely at Ning Yechen with her big eyes, and asked playfully in Luo Ruiying's ear. Mom, Dad doesn't want us. As soon as he saw Ning Yechen, Luo Hongye felt an inexplicable feeling of closeness to her. She has always been afraid of strangers, but she is not afraid of Ning Yechen at all, so she knows that he must be the father she longs for. Luo Hongye's words fell into Ning Yechen's heart, deeply touching his heart, and his heart couldn't help but tremble. He is the supreme figure in the demon world, and he is definitely not the kind of scumbag who abandons his wife and children and has no responsibility. If he can afford it, he can certainly afford it. Ning Yechen rushed to Luo Ruiying's side and grabbed her arm. Wait a minute, I didn't say I was irresponsible. HMPH, let me go. You don't need to be responsible anymore. Luo Ruiying was angry and wanted to throw away Ning Yechen's hand in anger. Afraid of hurting Ning Yechen, who was immortal, she deliberately restrained her strength and used very light strength. However, even if he restrained his strength, he could easily break free from the grasp of an adult man, but he could not shake off Ning Yechen's hand. Before Luo Ruiying could be surprised, her throat suddenly felt sweet, and she covered her mouth and coughed several times. Cough, cough, cough. A ball of blood appeared in Luo Ruiying's palm, and her beautiful face became much paler. You are hurt. Ning Yechen pinched Luo Ruiying's wrist, and her expression instantly became extremely cold. I'm fine. Let go. Luo Ruiying wanted to break away, but found that her body had no strength. She took a step forward, her vision went dark, and she fell into Ning Yechen's arms and passed out. Mother, mother, Luo Hongye cried and pulled Luo Ruiying's arm. Ning Yechen put his arm around Luo Ruiying's waist and hugged her tightly into his arms, and held Luo Hongye into his arms with the other hand. He comforted her softly and kindly. Don't worry. As long as Daddy is here, your mother will be fine. Inside the wooden house, Ning Yechen gently placed Luo Ruiying on the bed, holding her pulse with his palms, his expression becoming colder. After 100 years, it is rare that the murderous intention arises in my heart again. After careful diagnosis, he discovered that her condition was much worse than he imagined. The meridians are damaged all over the body. The immortal bones were dug away. Even the heart is gone. Stay alive with a fake heart. There were several wounds on the back, slightly oozing with blood. It's not easy to persist until now. Ning Yechen couldn't help but feel a little guilty, and his eyes looking at Luo Ruiying became much softer. He didn't know what she had encountered in the fairy world in the past 10 years, but he could guess that it must not be easy. Otherwise, the once dignified immortal emperor would not have fallen to this. When she was most desperate, she came to him with her children, and he almost drove them away. Ning Yechen gently caressed Luo Ruiying's cheek, pouring spiritual power into his palms to protect her body. It was not difficult for Ning Yechen to save her life, but with her meridians damaged and her immortal bones and heart lost, it would be difficult for her cultivation to return to its peak. Luo Hongye lay worriedly on the edge of the bed, silently dripping tears as big as pearls, and she was obedient not to cry. Daughter, come here. Ning Yechen put away her cold face, showed an amiable smile, and waved to Luo Hongye. He wanted to call her, but was embarrassed to find that he didn't even know his daughter's name. Let alone his daughter, he doesn't even know his wife's name. Luo Hongye timidly stepped in front of Ning Yechen, looked at him with big watery eyes, and cried out weakly. Daddy. The sound of Daddy almost melted Ning Yechen's heart. Ning Yechen excitedly hugged the little Luo Hongye into his arms and gently stroked her cute little head. Daughter, what is your name? Luo Hongye. Luo Hongye Nuo replied. Luo Hongye. Ning Yechen repeated the name gently and kept it in mind, then smiled and coaxed to Luo Hongye. Don't worry Ye, your mother is fine. Stop crying Ang. Luo Hongye nodded vigorously, looked at Ning Yechen with worry, and asked. Dad, does your injury not matter? Ning Yechen looked confused when asked. He didn't know how long it had been since he had been hurt. He has no memory of the last time he was injured. Mom said that the reason why Dad didn't come to see Yi Yi and Mom was because Dad was seriously injured, so he couldn't come to see Yi Yi, right? Luo Hongye looked at Ning Yechen expectantly and asked. When Ning Yechen heard this, he immediately understood that Luo Ruiying had found an excuse for him to deceive his daughter. He smiled helplessly and followed the excuse and said. That's right, Dad has been recuperating here, so he can't visit Yi Yi. Dad, I miss our family every night. When I saw our family Yi Yi, my father's injuries healed instantly. Really? Then Dad won't want Yi Yi and Mom, right? Luo Hongye asked happily with an innocent smile. Ning Yechen felt affection in her heart. She hugged Luo Hongye tighter, caressed her little head and assured. Won't. From now on, Dad will always be by Mom and Yi Yi's side to protect you. Luo Hongye happily clung to Ning Yechen's chest, holding onto his clothes tightly with both hands. She finally found her father. Yay, tell Daddy, where did you and your mother live before? How are you doing every day? Ning Yechen asked with a smile. But his smile hides a deep meaning. He must know what happened in the past 10 years. Who dares to take away his wife's immortal bones and heart, and then hurt her like this? Luo Ruiying naively thought that Ning Yechen was just curious about her past with her mother, so she happily talked about it. Ever since she was born and became sensible, she has been living in a small closet most of the time. Her mother said she was playing hide and seek with her, asking her to hide and keep quiet. Only when her mother comes back will she be taken out to be with her mother. Later, she hid in the closet for several days, and her mother never came to see her. She was so bored that she couldn't help but sneak out to look for her, and was discovered by others. Then she was locked in a dark iron cage. Being alone in the dark, she was scared at that time. Sometimes some people come to see her, but they all call her a fool. Those people looked so scary. She didn't like those people, so she kept curling up and hiding in the corner. Until her mother came to see her again, opened her from the dark iron cage, and took her away. But no matter where they go, there are many people chasing them. Those bad guys hurt my mother. Yi Yi doesn't like them. At this point, Luo Hongye raised her angry little face and said angrily. When Ning Yechen heard this, his face turned cold and frosty, and his heart almost exploded with anger. It's so awesome, the fairy world. He even dared to bully his wife and daughter. From Luo Hongye's words, we can probably guess what kind of life she lived. Luo Ruiying secretly gave birth to Luo Hongye without telling everyone. In order to prevent her from being discovered, she hid her in the closet and tricked her into playing hide and seek. Until she was discovered later, she had to break the prison and forcibly took Luo Hongye to escape from the fairy world. I must have suffered a lot of injuries and suffered a lot during this period. Ning Yechen wished he could rush to the fairy world right now and kill everyone who hurt his wife and daughter. But unfortunately Luo Hongye didn't know where she lived in the fairy world. She only knew that it was a very spacious and beautiful palace. Such palaces are everywhere in the immortal realm, and it is impossible to find them anywhere. Or, destroy the entire fairy world. It's not impossible. Just calling his precious daughter a fool is a good enough reason. Daddy, you look so scary. Luo Hongye looked at Ning Yechen's face full of murderous intent, shrank her head, and said Nunuo with some fear. Don't be afraid of Yi Yi. Daddy is thinking about punishing those bad guys who bully Yi Yi. From now on, Daddy will vent his anger on you, okay? Ning Yechen quickly put away his murderous intention and showed a kind and friendly smile. Okay, Dad also wants to help Mom out, those bad guys always bully Mom. Luo Hongye nodded and angrily clenched her little breast fist. Don't worry, none of those bad guys can escape. Ning Yechen rubbed Luo Hongye's head and smiled. I'm already thinking about where to start. Looks like I'm about to go on a trip. At this moment, Luo Ruiying, who was lying on the bed, her eyebrows trembling slightly, slowly opened her eyes, and woke up. Mother! Luo Hongye quickly flew into Luo Ruiying's arms. Luo Ruiying stroked Luo Hongye's head, her eyes full of love and tenderness. Ning Yechen smiled slightly, got up and left to brew the medicine. When Ning Yechen came back, Luo Hongye was already sleeping in Luo Ruiying's arms. Here, take the medicine. Ning Yechen sat on the edge of the bed holding the medicine. He held the medicine in one hand and slowly helped Luo Ruiying sit up with the other. The weak Luo Ruiying could not even sit up straight, so she could only lean on Ning Yechen's arms. By the way, what's your name? Luo Ruiying leaned on Ning Yechen and asked in a weak and embarrassed voice. It was she who brought the baby here to ask this man to take responsibility, but she didn't know his name. Ning Yechen. What about you, madam? Ning Yechen smiled. Mother. Hearing the lady's name, Luo Ruiying's pale cheeks had a blush, and her expression looked very awkward. She felt very uncomfortable with this title. She used to be the Empress of one side, but she felt strange when she was suddenly called that. Isn't it right? You and I have become husband and wife, and you have our children, shouldn't you just call me Niangzi? You can also call me husband. Ning Yechen said shamelessly and naturally. Since she is his woman, she will be his wife from now on. Although it was a bit sudden, I still felt happy that I suddenly had a wife and became a father. Luo Ruiying was speechless and had no words to refute, so she acquiesced to Ning Yechen's call. Anyway, I'm afraid she doesn't have much time left, so she'll just let him. What if she can be his wife for a few days? But she really can't do it when she calls her husband. This emperor, my name is Luo Ruiying. Luo Ruiying subconsciously wanted to call herself the emperor, but she quietly changed her name. She is no longer the empress of the fairy world. From this moment on, the two of them are truly acquainted. Ning Yechen smiled slightly, scooped up a spoonful of medicinal soup, blew it to cool down, and then brought it to Luo Ruiying's mouth. My wife has taken medicine, ah. Luo Ruiying did not open her mouth to drink the medicine in a hurry, but looked at Luo Hongye in her arms, looked thoughtful, raised her head and solemnly told Ning Yechen. If I am no longer here, this child will be in your hands. She wanted to entrust everything to Ning Yechen while her injuries were stable now. She was most aware of her own injuries. Her meridians were damaged and she lost her focus when digging into her bones. The yams that ordinary mortals could use to heal her injuries had no effect at all. So it doesn't matter whether she drinks or not. Okay, I understand, drink the medicine first. Ning Yechen said perfunctorily in order to get Luo Ruiying to drink the medicine as soon as possible. Luo Ruiying's instructions to him were a complete waste of time, because as long as she drank the medicine, she would be fine at all. Seeing Ning Yechen's perfunctory answer, Luo Ruiying frowned, looking very unhappy and disappointed. She was already in this state, explaining her funeral arrangements, but he looked like he didn't care. Did you listen? Ahaha. Just as Luo Ruiying was about to say something else, Ning Yechen took the opportunity to stuff the spoon into her mouth. The medicinal soup he specially prepared is very rare and precious even in the immortal world. The efficacy of the medicine evaporates quickly, so it cannot be wasted. Suddenly being force-fed some medicine, Luo Ruiying was about to get angry when she suddenly realized something was wrong and was stunned. She could feel the majestic medicinal spirit spreading in her body and traveling throughout her body. His whole body seemed to be wrapped in a warm current, and the injuries on his body could not help but recover as before in the blink of an eye. Even the meridians in his body were repairing themselves at an extremely fast speed. What kind of brewed medicine is this? Why is there such a powerful and amazing medicine? Even in the fairy world, she has never drunk such a powerful medicinal soup. How could such precious medicinal materials be used to brew such a medicinal soup in the human world? What kind of medicine is this? Luo Ruiying couldn't help but ask. It's just the yams I usually pick in the mountains. Come on, don't waste it, drink it while it's hot. Ning Yechen felt a little guilty and hurriedly continued to scoop up the medicinal soup and put it to Luo Ruiying's mouth. He, a mortal, has produced a lot of precious fairy grass and elixir, which is really difficult to explain. Luo Ruiying was dubious. How could there be such a precious yam in an ordinary forest? From what she tasted, there were at least several thousand-year or even 10,000-year-old elixirs. However, in order not to waste the precious medicinal effect, Luo Ruiying gave up questioning for the time being, and obediently opened her mouth and drank every spoonful of medicinal soup Ning Yechen fed her. This is the first time she has been taken care of like this. The other party is still immortal. Ning Yechen also enjoyed the process of giving medicine, and life seemed to have a lot more fun in an instant. Luo Ruiying gently opened her cherry-red lips and took the medicine spoon into her mouth. She greedily licked the medicine spoon clean without wasting a drop. Unexpectedly, giving medicine seems to be quite interesting. Luo Ruiying noticed Ning Yechen's gaze, raised her eyebrows in confusion and asked. What's wrong? Fine, I just think my wife is quite charming. Ning Yechen praised bluntly. No, rude. Luo Ruiying was caught off guard by this direct hit, and was unaware of the effect of the medicine at the time. Her cheeks were stained with a blush, she pursed her red lips and lowered her eyebrows. If it had been done before, she would have scolded the other party for being powerless, daring to speak scornfully against her, and then punish her. But at this moment, there was an indescribable strange feeling in my heart. Not particularly angry. Madam, can you tell me what happened? After feeding Luo Ruiying another mouthful, Ning Yechen took the opportunity to ask. It would be much easier if we could get some clues from Luo Ruiying. Luo Ruiying looked gloomy and shook her head firmly and decisively. This is the only thing, please don't ask again. The less you know the better, otherwise it will be very dangerous for you. Luo Ruiying didn't want Ning Yechen to get involved in her affairs. So what if he knew? She didn't feel a trace of spiritual power from his body. How could a mortal without any cultivation possibly fight against the forces of the fairy world? She didn't tell him because she didn't want him to get involved and be in danger. Although he knew that Luo Ruiying might not tell him, Ning Yechen still couldn't help but feel regretful. If he knew which force in the fairy world it was, he could directly strike with precision. The immortal world is vast, with countless holy places, large and small, divine palaces and sects everywhere, and hidden clans hidden deep in the world. It would be troublesome to find them. It seems that I still have to go to the fairy world myself. After giving the medicine, Ning Yechen slowly laid Luo Ruiying down on the bed, pulled up the quilt and covered her and Luo Hongye with the quilt. After taking the powerful elixir, Luo Ruiying soon felt sleepy and fell into a deep sleep, while her body continued to absorb the power of the medicine. Ning Yechen caressed her cheek distressingly, then stood up and walked out of the house, leaping up and turning into a dark rainbow that shot straight into the sky. The barrier between the human world and the fairy world was shattered at this moment. After 100 years, here I am again in the fairy world. The far eastern immortal realm, the border of ascension. Several dozens of tall ascension immortal gates stand on the clouds of the immortal realm, majestic, with momentum like a rainbow. This is the junction between the human world and the fairy world, and it is also the first place the human world reaches after ascending. All realms in the fairy world have the same place of ascension. It can be regarded as a fairyland reporting office. Once someone ascends to the lower realm, the Ascension Immortal Gate will open on its own. Several guards wearing immortal armor sat around the Immortal Gate chatting, drinking, and laughing. Do you know, hundreds of years ago, the Supreme Lord of the Demon Realm, Yi Mochen, led an army of Demon Realm to attack our immortal realm. The entire immortal realm united and unified, setting off a bloody storm. The fight was so dark that the sun and the moon lost all light. As a result, the entire fairy world was almost demolished by the demon lord Yi Mochen. Dozens of immortal emperors joined forces but failed to take down the demon king. After finally demolishing most of the immortal realm, the demon lord led the demon realm army and left in anger. That was the third battle between immortals and demons in history, and it was also the most serious damage to the immortal world so far. You brother, I was lucky enough to witness that battle between immortals and demons, and I still survived. A rather bloated captain of the guard vividly explained to several other guards the unparalleled battle between immortals and demons more than 100 years ago. Several other guards listened attentively and with great interest. Nowadays, there has been no turmoil in the immortal world for who knows how long, and it is extremely stable. Not only is the daily janitor job meaningless, it's boring as hell. Then, what happened to the demon lord in the end? Why haven't you heard any news about the demon lord now? Is he dead? One of the guards raised his hand and asked curiously. Several other guards also had the same question, and they were all waiting for the fat guard to answer. The fat guard straightened the general's belly and said proudly, "It is said that the demon king returned to the demon world after fighting with dozens of immortal emperors in our immortal world, and disappeared from the demon world soon after. Some people speculate that he was seriously injured and unfortunately died. The demon realm deliberately suppressed the news and did not dare to leak it, so there is no news about the demon lord anymore." I see. Then it seems that my fairy world is better. That is my fairy world comparable to that of the demon world? Ha ha ha. Everyone boasted and looked up to the sky laughing proudly. By the way, you haven't told me what the demon lord looks like. After laughing, another person asked curiously. Just as the fat guard was about to answer, the Ascension Immortal Sect suddenly activated and produced extremely violent fluctuations. What's going on? Why did the shaman react so violently? I don't know, I've never seen it before. All the guards were stunned and quickly stood up to check. They have never seen such violent turmoil in the Immortal Sect. It's like someone is forcing his way through the fairy gate and into the fairy world. Who is so bold? How dare you force your way into the fairy world? All the guards stood ready, their spears pointed at the Immortal Gate. After a moment, the Immortal Gate was overloaded, the spiritual light exploded, and a violent cloud and mist was set off. A figure jumped through the cloud and mist and slowly stepped out of the broken Immortal Gate. It was the first time for the guards to see someone capable of breaking the Immortal Gate, and they all opened their mouths in shock. After seeing the figure appear, they immediately surrounded him with guns drawn. The leading fat guard shouted angrily, "Who dare to trespass into the immortal realm and destroy the immortal sect?" The clouds and mist dissipated, and Ning Yechen's figure appeared in everyone's sight. Ning Yechen looked around and stretched his waist lazily. "It's been so long since I've been to the fairy world to stretch my muscles, I almost lost my way." More than 100 years later, the fairy world is still the same as before, unchanged at all. Everything he had demolished before was rebuilt. So good. Master Guard, Should we go up and take him down? The guards looked at Ning Yechen eagerly and got closer. The fat captain of the guard was stunned on the spot, his whole body was shaking uncontrollably, and his expression was full of horror, as if he had seen a ghost. It's him. That man. He's not dead. It's back. The guard beside him noticed something was wrong with the fat guard's expression, so he came forward and asked quietly. Sir, what's wrong with you? Everyone is waiting for your order. Should we take him down? Take. The fat captain of the guard was so frightened that he stammered. As soon as he opened his mouth and before he could finish speaking, the guard on the side nodded in understanding and immediately directed the people around him to step forward. The captain of the guard has an order, take it. A group of guards immediately rushed forward with guns. Ning Yechen glanced at the guards coldly, waved his sleeves and robes, and the black flames rolled over. Before the guards could make any sound, they all turned into ashes. Although he doesn't like fighting and killing now, if he takes the initiative to provoke him, he will show no mercy. Operator. The guard who gave the order was stunned for a moment. Only he and the fat captain of the guard were left. The fat captain of the guard then opened his mouth and continued to finish what he had not finished. Take, you big-headed devil. He is the supreme being of the demon realm. Ah! The guard was so frightened that his legs weakened and he collapsed on the ground. Ning Yechen was surprised that after more than 100 years, someone still knew him. You know me. Your name has been spread throughout the fairy world for a long time. Xiao, I was lucky enough to meet you once more than 100 years ago. Seeing Ning Yechen approaching, the fat captain of the guard was so frightened that he knelt on his knees and replied tremblingly. Ning Yechen nodded, showed a kind smile, and asked. I haven't been to the immortal realm for a long time. Where is the Tiandao Emperor's palace? In that direction. The fat captain of the guard raised his hand tremblingly and pointed in a certain direction. Don't dare to hide it at all. To him, the smile on Ning Yechen's face was like the god of death waving at him. He just hopes that when he dies, he can be like those guards just now, without any pain. Thank you. Ning Yechen thanked the fat captain of the guard and once again turned into a dark divine rainbow and flew towards the Tiandao Imperial Palace. Looking at Ning Yechen walking away, the fat captain of the guard and the other guard immediately collapsed to the ground and passed out. Tiandao Imperial Palace. Changhua Immortal Palace stands on the top of the immortal world. The magnificent palaces complement each other, the golden light shines brightly, and the scene is magnificent. This is the Tiandao Imperial Palace, one of the 9 peak powers in the immortal world. Ning Yechen arrived above the Tiandao Imperial Palace in the blink of an eye, and shouted loudly to the vast and boundless Tiandao Imperial Palace. Old guy, you shouldn't be dead yet. Come out and see me if you're not dead. The words were accompanied by demonic sound waves that spread throughout the Tiandao Imperial Palace. Everyone in the Imperial Palace felt as if their hearts and minds were exploding. They covered their ears in pain and collapsed on the ground. Those with lower cultivation levels even bleed directly from their 7 orifices and fainted on the spot. The sudden change shocked everyone in the Tiandao Imperial Palace. How dare someone dare to speak rudely to the Tiandao Emperor's palace in the immortal realm? Young man, how dare you break into the Tiandao Imperial Palace without permission? You are so rude to the people of our Imperial Palace. A middle-aged man wearing a golden fairy robe and an imposing look gave a loud shout, flew out of the main hall of the Tiandao Emperor's palace, stood in the air and came to Ning Yechen. The moment he saw Ning Yechen, Tiandao Chengrong frowned slightly. The man in front of me looks very familiar, but I can't remember who it is. Who are you? Where's that old guy from Tiandao Wenchen? Ning Yechen put his hands behind his back and looked at Tiandao Chengrong and asked doubtfully. It's been a long time since I've been to the immortal realm. The people in the Tiandao Imperial Palace have changed. Ning Yechen's arrogant attitude, even in the entire immortal world, few people dare to speak like this to the people in the Tiandao Imperial Palace. The more Tiandao Evergreen looked at it, the more familiar it became. He gradually remembered Ning Yechen's identity, and his expression suddenly changed. It's you, the Supreme Lord of the Demon Realm, Yi Mochen. Tiandao Chengrong's expression was startled, his eyes were full of terror, and the fear that had been hidden in his heart for more than 100 years was awakened again at this moment. More than 100 years ago, he had secretly seen it once. Compared with the demon lord's posture more than 100 years ago, Ning Yechen now looked kind-hearted, no doubt like a mortal with no cultivation, so he didn't recognize him for a moment. Yes, there are still people in Tiandao Imperial Palace who recognize me. But you are wrong about one thing. I am the former Supreme Lord of the Demon Realm, and I have retired now. Ning Yechen shook his finger and corrected. Yi Mochen, you broke into the immortal realm without permission, disturbed the peace of my immortal realm, and hurt my Tiandao Imperial Palace. You really think that my Tiandao Imperial Palace is easy to bully? Although Tiandao Chengrong was frightened in his heart, as the current master of Tiandao Imperial Palace, after calming down for a moment, he still scolded Ning Yechen with raised eyebrows. Ning Yechen frowned slightly, looking unhappy. The sky has cleared up and the rain has stopped. Does your Tiandao Imperial Palace think you can do it again? It seems that the demolition of the Tiandao Imperial Palace last time was not thorough enough. Snort. Yi Mochen, do you really think that our fairy world has not changed at all in these more than 100 years? Now I have also stepped into the ranks of immortal emperors, in order to one day avenge you for destroying my Tiandao Imperial Palace 100 years ago. Ah, Tiandao Chengrong's expression was fierce, and with a roar, the terrifying immortal emperor aura burst out, shooting straight into the sky. The huge and terrifying pressure shattered the Chonglo Palace with a radius of hundreds of miles, and countless people were pressed to the ground unable to breathe. Those with a little bit of strength could only raise their heads reluctantly and cheer for the majesty of the master of their Tiandao Imperial Palace. As expected of us, the palace master of the Tiandao Emperor's Palace. The proud son of the younger generation. In just over 100 years, I have stepped from the rank of immortal lord to immortal emperor. This is the first time I have seen Lord Imperial Palace in his full glory, how majestic and domineering he is. In the fairy world, the strength of Lord Imperial Palace is also one of the few. HMPH. Lord Imperial Palace is angry. Now you have to teach this ignorant boy a lesson. Ning Yechen sighed helplessly, raised his dark and deep eyes and glanced at Tiandao Evergreen. With a tap of his hand out of thin air, a huge black palm that was 100 feet tore through the void, and pressed down from the top of Tiandao Chengrong's head out of thin air. The dark clutches covered half of the Tiandao Imperial Palace. Including Tiandao Evergreen, all the people in the Tiandao Imperial Palace were trembling and unable to move at all. Boom! There was a loud noise, and the entire immortal world trembled, and a small half of the Tiandao Imperial Palace was crushed into powder. Tiandao Chengrong, who was suppressed by the devil's palm, spat out a mouthful of blood and buried his body into the ground. He felt that all the muscles and bones in his body were broken, and his expression was full of horror and fear. How can this be? He has already stepped into the immortal emperor. Why is it that in the hands of the demon lord, he is as helpless as a little chicken? He almost died in one move. Remember to eat, not to fight. It seems that there is no need for the Tiandao Emperor's palace to exist. Ning Yechen stood with his hands behind his back, walked in the air, and shouted faintly towards the depths of the Tiandao Imperial Palace. Old guy, I know you're not dead. If you don't come out, I will crush your Tiandao Imperial Palace to the ground. Leave no one behind. I count to 3, 1. As soon as he finished speaking, a cyan rainbow flew out from the depths of the Tiandao Imperial Palace, followed closely by several rainbows of different colors behind him. An old man with an immortal spirit and a 3-foot white beard hurried to Ning Yechen. Also accompanying him were several immortal emperor-level elders from the Tiandao Imperial Palace. Very good. The Patriarch of Tiandao is out of seclusion. There are also several elders who have finished their retreat and come out. You don't have to be afraid of that guy now. Is it possible that he can still compete with my entire Tiandao Imperial Palace by himself? Under the Tiandao Emperor's Palace, countless disciples of the Emperor's Palace looked up expectantly at the Tiandao Patriarch and several elders in the sky. They represent not only the true strength of the Tiandao Imperial Palace, but also one of the peak strengths in the immortal world. Old guy, you are finally willing to let go. Ning Yechen looked at Tiandao Wenshan, the ancestor of Tiandao, and smiled lightly. Tiandao Wenshan looked at Ning Yechen, his pale eyes trembling, and his expression was so frightened that he looked paler than Tiandao Chengrong. This god of death is really alive. And why is he back again? Whoever killed 1,000 swords recruited him back. Recalling the battle between immortals and demons more than 100 years ago, Tiandao Wenchen trembled all over. If possible, he would rather use all the power of the Imperial Palace to fight against the other 8 major forces in the immortal world, rather than encounter this demon king again. When he first heard the movement in the Tiandao Imperial Palace and Ning Yechen's voice, he vaguely guessed that he was coming. I wanted to hide away, but if he didn't come out, I was afraid that the entire Tiandao Imperial Palace would be lost. Why are you bringing so many people with you, old guy? Are you planning on squaring off against me? It just so happens that it's been more than 100 years and I haven't done anything for a long time. It's time to warm up, Ning Yechen said with a bright smile on his face. The two of them talked like close friends, but every word they said made Tiandao Wenchen shudder. Without any hesitation, Tiandao Wenchen quickly shook his head and gave a flattering smile. Tiandao Wenchen has seen the Demon Lord. The Demon Lord is really joking. How can I, the Emperor of Heaven, dare to be the enemy of the Demon Lord? All the disciples under the Tiandao Emperor's palace looked at Tiandao Wenchen with stunned expressions, and their faith collapsed instantly. Is this still the majestic and uncompromising patriarch of heavenly Tao that they have seen? He actually took the initiative to please and apologize. I wonder if the Demon Lord can let go of my great-grandson. Tiandao Wenchen looked at Tiandao Chengrong under the devil's palm, and he felt relieved when he saw that he was not dead yet, and his attitude was very polite and courteous. Dozens of immortal emperors have joined forces and failed to capture this Demon Lord. There is no need for his Tiandao Imperial Palace to fight against him alone. If the Tiandao Imperial Palace is destroyed, it will be destroyed. At the worst, it will just be rebuilt, as long as the foundation remains. Ning Yechen glanced at Tiandao Chengrong, waved his arm, and the demonic palm that held up to the sky suddenly dissipated between heaven and earth. Ancestor, you must seek justice for our Tiandao Imperial Palace. After escaping death, Tiandao Chengrong immediately ran to Tiandao Wenchen and pointed at Ning Yechen and said. What he responded to was a crisp and loud slap. Snapped. Ignorant thing. If you offend the Demon Lord, you will be punished in seclusion for 100 years. Tiandao Wenchen was very angry. Tiandao Evergreen actually wants to take action against the Demon Lord, because he is really afraid that he will not destroy the Tiandao Imperial Palace. No self-knowledge at all. If he can do it, he still needs to apologize here. Tiandao Chengrong was slapped 100 meters away, leaving him stunned and with blood at the corner of his mouth. He couldn't believe that his ancestor who always loved him the most would beat him so angrily. 100 years ago, Tiandao Evergreen had been protected and had never fought against the Demon Lord in person, so he had no idea of his true strength. And Tiandao Wenchen has personal experience and knows that the entire Tiandao Imperial Palace cannot be his opponent. This slap and punishment was to save him. I announce that I will abolish the position of the Palace Master of the Tiandao Shangrong Tiandao Imperial Palace. Keep him in a forbidden area for 100 years. Someone, drag it away. Several guards came forward and pulled Tiandao Evergreen away, who was sitting on the ground. When Ning Yechen saw this, he smiled and said nothing. This is nothing more than setting up a scene for him to see. This time he came to the Tiandao Imperial Palace to do something, not to destroy the Tiandao Imperial Palace, so forget it. Otherwise, he would have slapped Tiandao Evergreen to death. I wonder what the important matter is for the Demon Lord to come to my Tiandao Imperial Palace. Tiandao Wenchen asked politely with his hands raised. At this moment, all he wanted to do was send this murderer away as soon as possible. As long as he was here, he felt stressed. Countless disciples of the Tiandao Imperial Palace below the Imperial Palace looked at the scene in front of them with increasing astonishment. Their ancestor from the Tiandao Imperial Palace was one of the strongest men in the immortal world. How had he ever been so polite to anyone? But he was so groveling in front of that Demon Lord. He even took the initiative to punish Tiandao Chengrong, the current master of the Imperial Palace, and imprisoned him in a forbidden area. I came here today to ask the Tiandao Imperial Palace to do something for me. Ning Yechen said lightly. I wonder what the Demon Lord has ordered. Tiandao Wenchen asked doubtfully. What can happen to make this Demon King appear again after 100 years? I want you and the other 8 major forces in the fairy world to find out all the information about a woman named Luo Ruiying in the fairy world. especially the family background she belongs to, do you understand? Ning Yechen calmly stated the purpose of his trip. Instead of slowly searching for who knows how long it will take in the fairy world, it is more convenient to let the locals in the fairy world do it for you. Tiandao Wenshan didn't expect that Ning Yechen would appear in the fairy world again just to inquire about a woman and her family background. I wonder if this woman has offended you, Demon Lord. If so, the Tiandao Emperor's palace is willing to do the work for the Demon Lord. Tiandao Wenshan's eyes narrowed slightly, and there was murderous intent in his words. Ning Yechen slowly shook his head, but his eyes showed a hint of coldness. No need, you just need to tell me all the relevant information. I'll take care of the rest. I understand. I can inform other sects in the immortal realm to find relevant news for you. Tiandao Wenshan was shocked. He felt Ning Yechen's killing intent and felt a chill all over his body. He couldn't help but secretly curse at the forces behind Luo Ruiying. It's not good to offend anyone, but I offended this god of death. It also caused him to go to the immortal world again and demolished half of his Tiandao imperial palace. If Ning Yechen didn't take action, he would have shot him to death. Very good, I'll come back in 3 days. If there is no news I want by then, the Tiandao imperial palace will disappear. Ning Yechen left a word and transformed into a dark divine rainbow and left the sky above the Tiandao imperial palace in the blink of an eye. It seems like I've been away for a long time, it's time to go back quickly. Madam, they might be waking up soon. When Tiandao Wenshan saw Ning Yechen leaving, he breathed a sigh of relief, but then thought that he would come again in 3 days, and his heart was full of pain and worry. If he didn't get the news he wanted, he would have no doubt that he would erase the Tiandao imperial palace from the fairy world. Because with that guy's terrifying strength, he can really do it. All disciples of the Tiandao imperial palace obey orders. Immediately give up all practice, and everyone will go to various immortal realms to find information about a person named Luo Ruiying. Everyone with the surname Luo, check it out for me. In addition, notify the Wujidao Palace and other immortal realm forces so that they can also assist in the search. Tell them, Demon Lord, he is back again. Yes, please abide by the name of our ancestors. When the disciples of the Tiandao Imperial Palace saw the Tiandao Imperial Palace looking so serious and nervous for the first time, they did not dare to show any signs of neglect, and they turned into divine rainbows and dispersed towards the various realms of the fairy world. For a time, the news of Demon Lord Yi Mochen's return spread throughout the fairy world. What? Demon Lord Yi Mochen has returned to the fairy world. Is the demon world going to invade my fairy world again? It's over, it's over. Go and inform the ancestor. It's not good, my ancestor has already run away. Upon hearing the return of the demon, the entire fairy world was instantly turbulent. Countless people stayed awake all night, and an atmosphere of fear enveloped the fairy world. This night in the fairyland is destined to be a sleepless night. At the same time, in a dark palace somewhere in the demon world, several figures were sitting around a huge round table, their different magic pupils blooming with sharp light. The demon lord has appeared. HMPH, I knew how the great Lord Demon could be dead. But why doesn't Lord Demon Lord return to the demon realm? Why did Lord Demon Lord appear in the fairy world? Don't you call us when you hit the fairy world? I will lead people to kill in the fairy world right now. Don't be impulsive. According to the news, Lord Demon Lord has left the fairy world a long time ago. Quote. Anyway, it will be much easier to handle with the news about Lord Demon Lord. Fine, even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground, you must find Lord Demon Lord for me. Human world, Demon Forest, in the lodge. Luo Ruiying, who was lying on the bed, opened her eyes leisurely. After taking the elixir and sleeping all night, she could clearly feel that the injuries in her body were almost completely healed. Although his cultivation level cannot be restored, his injuries are basically unharmed. The rest just needs to be carefully maintained for some time. I didn't expect that there is such a miraculous elixir in the human world. Luo Ruiying felt greatly surprised and happy. Seeing Luo Hongye curled up in her arms still sleeping soundly, he gently stroked her head lovingly. She was prepared to say goodbye to this child at any time. Now I can continue to stay with this child. Luo Ruiying did not disturb Luo Hongye who was sleeping. She gently stood up and looked around the room, but Ning Yechen was nowhere to be seen. Just as he was about to get up and look for it, the door was gently pushed open with a creak. Ning Yechen walked into the house carrying a pot of steaming medicinal porridge. Seeing Luo Ruiying waking up and leaning on the bedside, she greeted with a smile. "Good morning, madam, wake up and have some porridge." "Did you wake up early in the morning to make porridge?" Luo Ruiying asked. Looking outside the house through the window, it is hazy outside, as if there is morning fog, and the sun has not fully risen yet. "My husband went outside for a walk first and made porridge by the way." Ning Yechen came to the bedside with the medicinal porridge, sat on the edge of the bed, scooped up a spoonful of medicinal porridge, blew it and handed it to Luo Ruiying's mouth, just like when he gave the medicine last night. "I'm fine now, I can come by myself." Luo Ruiying was not very used to being fed so intimately. She was unable to do anything because of her serious injury last night. Now that the injury was not serious, she wanted to reach out and take the medicine porridge herself. However, Ning Yechen didn't give her this chance. When she reached out her hand, she took the medicinal porridge away and said righteously, "No, you haven't recovered yet, so I'll feed you. My body really doesn't matter anymore," Luo Ruiying explained. "No, I don't think you can do it yet. Come on, ah." Ning Yechen didn't give her this chance at all, and once again took the initiative to feed the medicinal porridge in his hand to Luo Ruiying's mouth, looking at her with a smile. Luo Ruiying was angry in her heart. She always felt that this guy wanted to feed her on purpose. Luo Ruiying couldn't resist Ning Yechen's kindness, so she had to open her red lips in embarrassment and take the spoon filled with medicinal porridge into her mouth. She is over 400 years old, but she is fed like a child. The other party was still immortal, and if word of this spread, she would be too embarrassed to see him. Luo Ruiying blushed slightly while chewing the Chinese medicinal porridge, and her beautiful eyes suddenly lit up. The medicinal porridge melted in her mouth, and the rich aroma of medicine and ingredients filled her lips. A warm feeling flowed into her body, warming the meridians throughout her body. This medicinal porridge is no ordinary medicinal porridge. It also contains a lot of fairy grass elixirs, as well as the extremely tender Yinchao spirit fish without any odor. She had eaten it often when she was in the fairy world, and she tasted it in one bite. Yinchao Lingyu can not only heal the bones and residual wounds in the body, but also clear the meridians and replenish the body's spiritual power. Even in the fairy world, silver-green spirit fish are not often seen. And she actually ate the fish medicine porridge made from the silver-footed spirit fish in the human world. It tastes very delicious. "Here, is this medicinal porridge made by you?" Luo Ruiying opened her beautiful eyes and asked with an incredible expression. "Yes, is it delicious?" Ning Yechen asked with a smile. "Tasty," Luo Ruiying replied subconsciously, and then immediately shook her head. Now is not the time to explore whether it tastes good or not. "But why are there silver-green fishes in the human world? Where did you get the cooked fish?" There is a lake not far from the mountain behind the house. The fish are caught from there." Caught in the lake. Luo Ruiying was very surprised and stared at Ning Yechen with suspicion. The living conditions of the Yinchao spirit fish are extremely harsh. They must live in a spiritual spring with abundant spiritual power, otherwise they will rot and die in minutes. How is it possible to live in a lake in the human world? She suspected that he had lied to her. It used to be the fairy grass elixir before, but now it's the silver-green elixir. How come there are so many rare things in this small forest? I'm not lying to you. I really caught it in the lake. If you don't believe me, I'll take you to see it later. Ning Yechen sincerely met Luo Ruiying's scrutinizing eyes and explained. He didn't lie. The celestial herbs and elixirs were all collected from the mountains, but he planted them there himself 100 years ago. The Yinchao spirit fish was also caught in the lake, but he also stocked it in it himself. All right, Luo Ruiying saw that Ning Yechen really didn't seem to be lying anymore, so she didn't ask any more questions. Although she was full of doubts, she still decided to believe Ning Yechen's words. After all, he is just a mortal, and it is impossible to obtain these fairy grass elixirs or silver-green fish out of thin air. She would verify it for herself later. "Madam, Seeing that Luo Ruiying stopped asking, Ning Yechen continued to scoop up the medicinal porridge and put it to her mouth. Luo Ruiying opened her mouth and ate in one mouthful, gradually putting her previous worries behind her. The two of them behaved affectionately and fed each other repeatedly, but little did they know that a little guy had woken up and stared at their actions with big round eyes. Luo Ruiying found that Luo Hongye had been fed another mouthful when she woke up and stared at her. She immediately blushed, panicked, choked in her throat, and coughed several times. It was so embarrassing to see a child being fed. Ahem, night, you wake up. Luo Ruiying calmed down and reached out to hug Luo Hongye, but the red glow on her face had not faded yet. Daddy is feeding mother, just like mother feeding Yi Yi. Luo Hongye glanced at Ning Yechen, then looked up at Luo Ruiying and smiled. Luo Ruiying was immediately embarrassed and glared at Ning Yechen with an angry look. It's all this guy's fault. He told her she could eat it by herself, but he insisted on feeding her himself. Now let the children see it. Luo Ruiying's charming look made Ning Yechen couldn't help but take another look. I can't tell, but his wife's slightly angry look is quite cute. It turns out that women also have a cute side when they are angry. Daddy, I need to be fed every night. Luo Hongye didn't think there was anything wrong with the behavior of her father and mother. Instead, she felt very happy. She opened her little mouth and stretched her neck to feed him. Ning Yechen gently rubbed Luo Hongye's little head, then scooped up a spoonful of medicinal porridge and fed it into her mouth. This rare brewed medicinal porridge is also a great tonic for Luo Hongye, who is still growing. Luo Ruiying narrowed her eyes happily, raised her cute baby face, sat in Luo Ruiying's arms and shook her body gently. He opened his mouth in a milky voice and said, "Delicious. Daddy's cooking is more delicious than mother's, even more so every night." Luo Ruiying's face suddenly showed embarrassment and loneliness. It turns out that everything she cooked before was not delicious. As the Empress of the fairy world, it should be normal for her not to know how to cook. But hearing that she was inferior to a mortal, even in terms of cooking, still made Luo Ruiying feel a deep sense of defeat. If it tastes good, eat more every night. Hearing that the child liked it, Ning Yechen was very happy and scooped up the medicinal porridge again and fed it into Luo Hongye's mouth. I don't know why, but my heart is filled with pride and satisfaction. It would be 10,000 times more satisfying than him killing an immortal emperor. It's not in vain that he has been hiding here for more than 100 years and practicing cooking by himself every day, and he has learned good cooking skills. I didn't expect that the cooking skills I picked up casually would come in handy today. It can be regarded as some kind of coincidence. Ning Yechen saw Luo Ruiying's lonely and resentful expression and thought it was funny. He scooped up the medicinal porridge and fed it to her mouth. Madam, it's your turn. Luo Ruiying. There was a feeling of being fed like a child, which made Luo Ruiying's face look even more resentful. However, seeing Luo Hongye looking up at her expectantly, she opened her mouth and silently ate the medicinal porridge that was handed to her. I have to admire her, she does seem to be a little better than her. Seeing that Ning Yechen kept feeding them but she didn't eat, Luo Ruiying couldn't help but ask. You don't want to eat? If your husband is not hungry, you and your children can eat. Ning Yechen smiled. He was enjoying the process of feeding. As a demon king, it didn't matter even if he never ate. The occasional meal is just for the sake of appetite. Luo Ruiying didn't know that Ning Yechen was the infamous demon lord, she only thought of him as a mortal. I heard that food is particularly precious in the human world, especially for those poor mountain households living in the mountains and forests, who even live a life of chewing tree bark. She took a look at the room and it seemed that there was no food stored in it. She thought that Ning Yechen was wronging her by giving the food to them, and she was deeply moved. He took the initiative to grab the few remaining medicinal porridge from Ning Yechen's hand, scooped up the medicinal porridge with a slightly blushing face and fed it to his mouth. Ye and I are full, let you eat the rest. As the former Empress of the fairy world, she actually took the initiative to feed a mortal. Maybe no one would believe it. But this is also to repay his kindness. Besides, he is considered her husband, so it should be within reason. Ning Yechen was slightly surprised, not expecting Luo Ruiying to take the initiative to feed him. After smiling slightly, he happily opened his mouth to accept. This feeling of being fed was not the first time for him. His subordinates had done it to him before, but it was a completely different feeling. This is much more interesting than being a demon king. The family of 3 fed each other and spent the morning happily. After eating the medicinal porridge, Luo Ruiying felt that her body was almost healed, and her whole body gradually regained its strength. So he proposed to Ning Yechen the idea of going out for a walk. Since this would be her and her child's home from now on, she still had to make sure that this place was secluded and safe enough. By the way, she also wanted to see if it was true that Ning Yechen said that the fairy grass and elixir were picked in the back mountains. She was very curious and doubtful that such a rare fairy grass elixir could be grown in the human world. Luo Ruiying has recovered from her injuries and wants to go out for a walk. Naturally, Ning Yechen is happy to accompany her. After the 3 of them walked out of the wooden house, Luo Ruiying looked around carefully. The wooden house is located in an open forest, surrounded by dense woods. Looking up, it is surrounded by towering mountains. It can be considered a relatively secluded place. The only drawback is that it is isolated from the rest of the world. It is completely deserted and there is not a single person in the town. This is not bad for Luo Ruiying. It would be nice if I could spend the rest of my life peacefully in this hidden world. Madam, my husband will take you to the back mountain to have a look. Ning Yechen extended his palm to Luo Ruiying and said in invitation. Luo Ruiying hesitated for a moment, then put her palm into Ning Yechen's hand. The other hand held Luo Hongye in his arms. Ning Yechen held Luo Ruiying's delicate hand and walked towards the back mountain. In the woods behind the mountain, a strange scene unfolded before us. Bounded by 2 towering trees, the inner side of the big tree is lush and green, and you can see at a glance a variety of sparkling fairy herbs and elixirs. But the side outside the big tree was no different from an ordinary forest. All that grew on the ground were extremely ordinary weeds and shrubs. Such a huge difference surprised Luo Ruiying. The same forest, but 2 completely different scenes. Ning Yechen smiled slightly and led Luo Ruiying across the dividing line between 2 towering trees. The moment she stepped in, Luo Ruiying clearly felt that she seemed to have passed through some invisible barrier. On this side of the barrier, there are tens of thousands of immortal grasses and elixirs everywhere. The air is filled with spiritual dust visible to the naked eye, which is as dazzling as little stars. The spiritual power is astonishingly abundant. It's like being submerged in the spiritual dust and being washed, and the whole body is bathed in the spiritual power between heaven and earth. Luo Ruiying's beautiful eyes widened in shock. The spiritual power of this place is no less intense than that of the fairy world. No wonder so many rare medicinal herbs can grow. It's incredible. How could there be such a place in the human world? After being surprised, Luo Ruiying had a deep question in her heart. Judging from the feeling of not entering the barrier the moment you cross it, this should be a barrier created by a certain senior here, using spiritual power to nourish the immortal grass and elixir. The barrier given is also a barrier that specifically seals and gathers the spiritual power of heaven and earth. The spiritual power can only enter the barrier but not exit, while humans and animals can enter and exit on their own. To be able to cast such a large-scale spirit-gathering barrier, the other party must have a good level of cultivation. The strange thing is that the other party only cast a spirit-gathering barrier, but did not set up any defensive barriers. There was no sense of prevention at all. Isn't that senior at all worried that his carefully arranged medicine garden will be used as a wedding dress by other people or monsters? Luo Ruiying was puzzled. Which senior came to the human world to arrange this medicine garden? Madam, my husband didn't lie to you, did he? Those medicinal materials are all collected here. Ning Yechen proudly introduced to Luo Ruiying. In this medicine garden, he transplanted a lot of fairy grass elixirs and planted tens of thousands of seeds. It took him 100 years to have the fairy grass elixirs that are now all over the mountains and plains. Luo Ruiying nodded. Now she finally believed Ning Yechen's words. Unexpectedly, the mountain behind the wooden house happened to be this fairy medicine garden. His luck was good, he discovered a certain senior's elixir garden. Luo Ruiying's beautiful eyes curiously passed by a large pile of fairy grass and elixir, her eyes full of surprise. There are many fairy herbs and elixirs that were extremely rare even when she was in the fairy world. 1,000-year-old heavenly blood Ganoderma. Ice cicada immortal grass. Drunken fairy flower. Oh my god, there are even 7-color glazed flowers. Luo Ruiying walked to a dazzling flower and was filled with surprise. The 7 colors of the flowers blend together, and the petals show the luster of glass. The colorful colors flow like liquid on the petals, which is extremely gorgeous. The 7-color glazed flower has the effect of cleansing the meridians, cutting down the marrow, and laying the foundation. After taking it, your practice will not only make rapid progress in the future, but most bottlenecks will also be easily broken through as if they were nothing. Even in the immortal world, countless immortal sects will look for a 7-color glazed flower for their descendants. But here is a complete and intact flower. Luo Ruiying looked at the cute and well-behaved Luo Hongye in her arms, and wanted to reach out to pick the 7-color glazed flower, but she stopped her hand. Although she really wanted to take it to Luo Hongye, she couldn't do it. This may be a precious fairy grass specially planted by that senior. If taken away, that senior would be offended. And at the moment when Luo Ruiying hesitated, Ning Yechen stepped forward and reached out to pick off the 7-color glazed flower. He handed the 7-color glazed flower to Luo Ruiying. "Madam, I give it to you." How can you pick this flower?" Luo Ruiying was immediately frightened and turned pale. "This is a 7-color glazed flower. It cannot survive for 3 days after being picked. After 3 days, it will wither and dissipate. Even if the roots are left, I don't know how long it will take to grow back into a 7-color glazed flower. It's over, it's over. It's over now." Compared to Luo Ruiying, who was anxious and frightened, Ning Yechen was smiling and calm. "Madam, don't you want this flower?" I want. But Luo Ruiying didn't know what to say about Ning Yechen for a moment. He is just a mortal and does not know the value of this flower, which is understandable. What's more, the other party picked the flower just for her sake. The only thing to blame is that she didn't notice in time. "Since you like it, madam, that's enough." Ning Yechen once again handed the 7-color glazed flower to Luo Ruiying. Compared with the happiness of his wife and the future of his children, he doesn't care about a mere 7-color glazed flower. Luo Ruiying sighed softly, took the 7-color glazed flower, and fed it into Luo Hongye's mouth. At this point, since the 7-color glazed flower has been picked, it cannot be undone. Even if you don't accept it, it will only be wasted. If that senior comes to find her, she will find a way to use some fairy treasures to make amends. After Luo Hongye ate the 7-color glass flower, 7-color dazzling light flowed all over her body. After a while, it gradually dissipated, and her body and skin were as smooth and flawless as ice skin. This is just the initial effect of the medicine, and then the medicine will slowly exert its magical effect on the meridians and bones of her body. After eating, Luo Hongye stuck out her tongue, pouted her mouth and said aggrievedly to Luo Ruiying and Ning Yechen, "Dad, Mother, this doesn't taste good." Luo Ruiying was dumbfounded by Luo Hongye's words. "You know, this is the 7-color glazed flower that many people in the fairy world dream of. This kid still dislikes the taste. Daddy will find something delicious for you." Ning Yechen rubbed Luo Hongye's little head lovingly and walked skillfully under a dense cane. The vines are hung with grapes that sparkle like crystal. Each grape is as big as a child's hand, crystal clear, and the pulp is visible. This is crystal grape. So much. Luo Ruiying looked at a large area of dense crystal grapes in surprise. They were growing so well. Although crystal grapes are also common in the fairy world, they are a daily fruit snack. The pulp is rich in fruit juice and can also restore one's own spiritual power. In the human world, every crystal grape should be quite precious and rare. This large crystal grape orchard refreshed her understanding of fairy fruits in the human world. Ning Yechen picked off a crystal grape and fed it to Luo Hongye's mouth, and asked with a smile, "Yay, is it delicious? So sweet. Good pull." Luo Ruiying bit the crystal grape and smiled sweetly. When Ning Yechen was happy, he picked a large bunch of crystal grapes and fed them to Luo Hongye one by one. Luo Ruiying originally wanted to stop it. After all, this might be the fairy medicine garden of a certain senior. They had already accidentally taken the 7-color glazed flower, and it would be inappropriate to take other fairy grass or fairy fruit. But when she saw Luo Hongye eating so happily in her arms, and the father and daughter were in high spirits, it was difficult for her to say the words that came to her lips. With so many crystal grapes, that senior probably wouldn't care about what he ate. Luo Ruiying comforted herself in her heart. Just then, when Ning Yechen was about to eat a crystal grape, Luo Ruiying looked panicked and quickly grabbed his arm. You can't eat. Although the spiritual power contained in the crystal grape juice is not much, it is still fatal to a mortal with no cultivation. If you are not careful, you may die violently. Ning Yechen looked confused. Why couldn't he eat what he planted? But the next second, he remembered that he was immortal in Luo Ruiying's eyes, and he really couldn't eat this kind of fairy fruit casually. He usually eats by the pound, but now he can't eat even a grain. Otherwise, she will see the clues, and her identity will be exposed accidentally. Although it was a little regretful, Ning Yechen was still very happy to see Luo Ruiying looking nervous because of him. In order to pretend to be more realistic, Ning Yechen pretended not to know and asked, "Madam, why can't my husband eat it?" Luo Hongye also looked at Luo Ruiying curiously with big eyes. It's like asking why Yi can eat but daddy can't. Because this fruit is actually a fairy fruit. If you eat it, you will be in danger. A lot of things here are not edible. You have to promise me that you won't eat anything here casually in the future. Luo Ruiying warned Ning Yechen solemnly. She was surprised that Ning Yechen could survive here until now. Boiling some fairy grass elixir into medicinal porridge for breakfast would be a waste of most of the spiritual energy. If it were eaten directly, I'm afraid he would have died violently. Okay, as my wife says. Thank you for your concern, madam. Ning Yechen responded with a smile. Luo Ruiying blushed slightly and glanced away. She didn't know why she was so worried about him. Maybe because this guy is the father of the child. Another little cutie holding a crystal grape in her hand also heard Luo Ruiying's words and was so frightened that her eyes welled up and she almost cried. Mom, isn't it very dangerous every night? I won't be greedy from now on, woo woo woo. Don't cry every night, it will be fine. As long as you don't eat too much, Yi will be fine. Luo Ruiying hurriedly hugged Luo Hongye and patted her back to coax. Really? Luo Hongye looked at Luo Ruiying with watery eyes and asked. Real, Mom won't let anything happen to Yi. Luo Ruiying comforted her softly. Luo Hongye has her bloodline and her physique is different from ordinary people, so naturally she will be fine. Only then did Luo Hongye stop crying, lay in Luo Ruiying's arms with peace of mind, and asked in a low voice expectantly. Then mother, can I still eat every night? Certainly. You can eat as much as you want every night. Before Luo Ruiying could speak, Ning Yechen smiled fondly. He took another crystal grape in his hand and fed it into Luo Hongye's mouth. Luo Hongye, who was afraid of crying just now, suddenly smiled happily again. Luo Ruiying also smiled helplessly and dotingly. Forget it, as long as the child is happy. After Ning Yechen finished feeding Luo Hongye, he picked another one and handed it to Luo Ruiying's mouth, with the doting smile still on his face. Luo Ruiying's cheeks were slightly red, and she opened her red lips slightly to eat. She seems to be getting used to being fed. Under the leadership of Ning Yechen, the three of them ate all the way and basically tasted all the edible fairy fruits and grasses they passed by. Basically, Ning Yechen fed Luo Ruiying and Luo Hongye, mother and daughter. Not long after, the three of them came to a wide lake. The water of the lake is crystal clear, the water is rippling, and the sun shines on the surface of the lake. From time to time, a few silver fish leap out of the water. As soon as Luo Ruiying walked to the lake, she could feel the extremely rich and pure spiritual power. At first glance, I realized that the entire lake is composed of natural spiritual liquid. Such a huge natural spiritual lake is particularly rare. Even a sip can increase your cultivation a lot. No wonder there are so many silvery fish here. This fairy medicine garden shocked her too much. This made her even more concerned about who the senior who could create this fairy medicine garden was. Not far from Linggu Lake, there is a large area of cultivated land, which is divided into several areas, where various crops are planted, and the growth is particularly attractive. Luo Ruiying walked into the farmland with eyes full of shock, picked up a rice plant and smelled it. The rice in his hand was crystal clear, containing weak spiritual power, and a faint spiritual energy penetrated his nose. This is a rice field planted with spiritual liquid. Did you plant this? Luo Ruiying looked back at Ning Yechen and asked. To grow so vigorously, it must need regular watering with spiritual liquid. Ordinary people would never waste precious spiritual fluid to water these crops. That senior would never do such a waste of pure spiritual liquid. Then it can only be Ning Yeshan who lives nearby. Ning Yeshan nodded proudly. Madam, isn't it a good harvest for your husband? This is the food he cultivated carefully. In order to enjoy his appetite, he deliberately planted many crops. Seeing Ning Yechen's proud face waiting for praise, Luo Rying's cheeks couldn't help but twitch slightly, and she felt a pang of pity in her heart. That is precious natural spiritual fluid. He was actually used to grow food. What a waste of natural resources. Such a waste. Luo Ruiying sighed helplessly and kept advising herself over and over. He is just a mortal who doesn't know how precious spiritual liquid is. You can't blame him. Chapter 11. Luo Ruiying held Luo Hongye and walked around the fairy medicine garden with curiosity. Ning Yechen suddenly had an idea in his mind and took the opportunity to walk alone to another empty lawn not far away. Originally this place was also intended to be used as farmland to grow other crops, but now he has a new idea. Ning Yechen waved his sleeves, and tens of thousands of seeds were scattered on the lawn like raindrops. There was a clear, pop, sound. Ning Yechen snapped his fingers, and the lawn suddenly bloomed with flowers, and the mountains and fields were covered with colorful flowers. The sea of flowers is in full bloom, and the rich floral fragrance spreads hundreds of miles away. Luo Ruiying was also suddenly attracted by the rich fragrance of flowers, and stared blankly at the magnificent and colorful mountains of flowers in front of her. When the breeze blows by, colorful flower petals are thrown into the air. Luo Hongye happily jumped out of Luo Ruiying's arms and jumped into the flowers. How are you, madam? Do you like it? Ning Yechen slowly walked to Luo Ruiying and asked with a smile. Luo Ruiying turned to look at Ning Yechen, with a look of disbelief on her face. This, you planted this too? Ning Yechen nodded. Luo Ruiying was shocked. How long does it take to create such a beautiful sea of flowers? Ning Yechen took Luo Ruiying and sat among the flowers, enjoying the breeze blowing on her face and the refreshing fragrance. Since escaping from the fairy world, Luo Ruiying's nerves have been tense all the time, worrying that those people will chase her again. At this moment, the tense nerves finally relaxed a little. Luo Ruiying gently brushed a few strands of hair on her cheeks that were blown by the breeze with her slender fingers, and slightly outlined a crescent-shaped smile at the corner of her mouth, revealing a beautiful smile. Facing Luo Hongye, who was playing among the flowers not far away, she asked in a sweet voice. Yay, be careful, don't run too fast or stay too far away. Ning Yechen stared blankly at Luo Ruiying's beautiful profile. Her heart moved, and she couldn't help but put her arms around her delicate waist. He had seen countless fairies and witches before but never had this feeling. For some reason, when he looked at Luo Ruiying, there was an indescribable throbbing in his heart. Is it because she is his first woman and already his wife? Suddenly someone hugged her waist. Luo Ruiying's delicate body trembled slightly, a trace of panic flashed in her beautiful eyes, but there was no resistance. It's just that my body is very tight and nervous. With her current level of cultivation in the human realm, it would be easy for her to break free, but she did not do so. On the one hand, he was worried about accidentally injuring Ning Yechen. After all, mortals were very fragile to monks. On the other hand, she actually didn't hate Ning Yechen in her heart, and she had never looked down on him because he was a mortal. Although she once blamed him for taking away her body, now that the child has been born, the two of them can be considered a real couple. Hugging between husband and wife should be considered a normal behavior. Ning Yechen couldn't help but feel funny when he saw Luo Ruiying's body tense and stiff as wood. He leaned close to her ear and whispered softly. Madam, relax, my husband won't eat you. I'm not nervous. These words instantly made Luo Ruiying blush. She raised her eyes and glared at Ning Yechen. How dare a mere mortal tease her? Faced with Luo Ruiying's charming and angry glare, Ning Yechen didn't take it seriously. Instead, he found her angry look particularly cute and smiled with satisfaction. Luo Ruiying's chest heaved up and down with anger, and she turned away with a blushing face and ignored Ning Yechen. This hateful guy knew that she was a cultivator, but he still dared to tease her like this. If it had been anyone else, she would have slapped him to death. Just when Ning Yechen and Luo Ruiying were alone, Luo Hongye, lying among the flowers, saw a brightly colored butterfly flying in front of her eyes. Luo Hongye had never seen a butterfly before. Her eyes lit up and she immediately chased the butterfly with small steps. Unconsciously, I ran to the edge of the flower bush, and the butterfly finally stopped on a flower. Luo Hongye curiously approached the butterfly and wanted to touch it, but the butterfly was frightened and flew into the trees. Ah, wait a minute. Luo Hongye chased after him, but the butterfly had already disappeared among the trees. It was empty, densely wooded, and silent. Luo Ruiying felt scared in her heart. When she turned around, she realized that she was a little far away from her mother and father. Just as she was about to rush back, a huge dark figure covered her petite body from behind. Luo Hongye turned around and saw a huge, ferocious dragon with scales all over its body like sharp knives sticking its head out from the trees. The dragon's dark vertical pupils stared closely at Luo Hongye, his eyes full of surprise and greed, and saliva flowed from the corner of his mouth. Look what I found. Humans. It's been a long time since I've tasted a human. Yi is not delicious. Luo Hongye shivered with fear and stepped back step by step. She stumbled and fell down. Wow, made me cry loudly in fright. Ooh, Mom, Daddy. This cry was immediately noticed by Ning Yechen and Luo Ruiying. Luo Ruiying didn't find Luo Hongye's figure, and she looked panicked. She immediately stepped out and followed the source of the sound. Ha ha ha, it's useless for you to call me Daddy. Be good and let me eat it. Don't worry, you won't feel any pain. The black-scaled dragon opened its bloody mouth and bit into Luo Hongye. At this critical moment, Luo Ruiying jumped out and shot out, slicing the entire face of the black-scaled dragon with one sword. Roll, beast. What do you want to do to my child? Luo Ruiying held her sword in front of Luo Hongye, staring at the black-scaled dragon in front of her with a cold face. His face was scratched and blood was flowing down. The black-scaled dragon was in pain and stared at Luo Ruiying angrily. Humans, how dare you scratch my face? Except for that adult, no one here dares to do this to me. Having said that, the black-scaled dragon's body extended countless steel blades, and an astonishing amount of spiritual power surged out of its body. The black-scaled dragon in the realm of gods. That is a demon beast at the level of a demon king. There was a hint of surprise and vigilance in Luo Ruiying's eyes. The black-scaled dragon is at the pinnacle of cultivation strength in the human world. Didn't expect to show up here. Could it be that he was attracted by the smell of elixir and fairy fruit? She should have been on guard. Luo Ruiying fell into self-blame. It was because of her negligence that she almost put the child in danger. If her previous cultivation level had been put aside, she could kill this black-scaled dragon with just one sword. But now her cultivation strength is only in the heavenly realm. If you really fight against the black-scaled dragon, you may not lose. It's just that she's worried that she can't take Luo Hongye's safety into consideration at the same time. What to do, or just run away with the child? Just as Luo Ruiying was thinking about how to deal with it, Ning Yechen's figure slowly came from behind. Seeing Ning Yechen coming over, Luo Ruiying looked panicked. This is bad. If she only took Luo Hongye with her, she would be confident enough to escape unscathed. If Ning Yechen is included, he may not be able to escape from the black-scaled dragon. Luo Ruiying was caught in a dilemma. You take the children and leave first. I'll hold it back. After some thought, Luo Ruiying whispered to Ning Yechen. This is the best way. Let Ning Yechen take the child away first, and she can go all out to deal with this black-scaled dragon. Ning Yechen did not answer Luo Ruiying, but gently picked up the frightened Luo Hongye on the ground, patted her back gently and comforted. Don't cry every night. Dad and Mother are here, it's okay. Luo Hongye stopped crying and huddled into Ning Yechen's arms in fear. Ning Yechen gently stroked her head, then raised his head and looked coldly at the black-scaled dragon. When the black-scaled dragon saw Ning Yechen, his expression became extremely frightened, and his aura instantly disappeared. It's him. That child turned out to be his child. It's over. Dead. The black-scaled dragon turned around and ran away without any hesitation. The huge body flew over the woods like an afterimage, at an astonishing speed. Luo Ruiying looked confused. Why did the black-scaled dragon, which was so ferocious just now, suddenly run away? It turns out that the black-scaled dragon can run so fast even without turning into human form. Judging from its frightened look, could it be that it was frightened by her aura? Luo Ruiying was puzzled. This is the only reasonable explanation in my mind. Regardless, she was relieved that the black scale dragon took the initiative to escape. Yay, are you okay? Luo Ruiying put away the fairy sword and hurriedly ran to Luo Hongye to check her injuries worriedly. Fortunately, I just fell down, twisted my foot, and slightly scratched the skin. Luo Hongye, who had just calmed down, cried again and threw herself from Ning Yechen's arms into Luo Ruiying's arms. Ooh, mother, be good, don't cry, mother is here. Luo Ruiying gently lifted Luo Hongye up and down and coaxed. The child was frightened, and she blamed herself. If she had looked more carefully, such a dangerous thing would not have happened. Come on, let's go home first. It's dangerous here. Luo Ruiying looked at Ning Yechen and said. The child was frightened and naturally was not in the mood to continue playing outside. It is also dangerous if you encounter other monsters. Madam, you should take the children back home first. My husband needs to clean up the insects near the orchard first. Ning Yechen whispered to Luo Ruiying, then turned around and walked into the woods. Luo Ruiying wanted to stop Ning Yechen and tell him not to worry about the bugs. The presence of monsters nearby meant that this place was very dangerous. It would be quite dangerous for a mortal to encounter a monster. However, in the blink of an eye by Luo Ruiying, Ning Yechen had disappeared into the woods. Over the mountain forest, a huge black figure flashed through the air quickly. The giant black scale dragon flapped its wings with all its strength while turning its head to look behind it in horror. He accidentally touched that adult's person, and he definitely can't stay in the demon forest any longer. If he doesn't leave, he will definitely die. Where are you going? The moment the black scale dragon turned its head, a cold voice came from the front. That voice was like a greeting from the god of death, making the black scale dragon feel as cold as falling into an ice cave. Sir, this is a misunderstanding. I really didn't know she was your child. The black scale dragon stopped in front of Ning Yechen, its huge body knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. Fine, just be more careful in the next life. Ning Yechen raised his hand and shook it gently. The body of the black scale dragon, which was dozens of feet long, twisted and compressed in an instant. Sir. Aha. The black scale dragon wanted to continue begging for mercy, but his steel-tough body had been compressed into a ball the size of a palm. I scared my daughter, made her cry, and let you die like this. It's an advantage for you. Ning Yechen looked at the ball twisted by the black scale dragon indifferently, turned the ball into ashes with a wave of his palm, and shouted to the surroundings. Chaos Bull Demon, Titan Giant Ape, Sky-Eating Divine Python. You all come here. The sound was not loud, but rippled from Ning Yechen's center like a ripple. After a while, 3 figures quickly rushed to Ning Yechen from different directions. Lord. The 3 of them bowed respectfully and raised their hands in greeting. His head was lowered, cold sweat dripped from his forehead, and he didn't dare to look directly into Ning Yechen's eyes. Because they know deeply that the person in front of them is definitely not someone they can easily provoke. There used to be nearly 100 demon kings deep in the demon forest, but after he came, only 4 were left. No, there are only 3 left now. Ning Yechen casually crushed the black-scaled dragon to death, and they all secretly watched in their eyes. Feeling that Ning Yechen didn't seem very happy today, everyone was even more worried and their legs were trembling. I'm afraid that he will crush them all to death if he gets upset. I really don't know how that black-scaled dragon managed to offend this adult. Doesn't this kill them? Everyone couldn't help but curse secretly at the dead black-scaled dragon. Ning Yechen glanced at everyone with cold eyes and said calmly. My wife and my daughter came back recently. The black-scaled dragon not only scared my daughter, he almost ate her. So I killed him. That guy Zan Lin dares to attack your daughter. He deserves death. The pale and thick-haired Titan ape raised his fist and said angrily. That's right. If I know about it, I will kill him for you without you taking action. The Chaos Bull Demon, who was tall and muscular and nearly 2 feet tall, also echoed angrily. Another woman with a figure as thin as a water snake also nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Yes, sir, if you just kill him like this, you are already taking advantage of him. It seems that you all agree with me killing him. Ning Yechen asked. Certainly. The 3 demon kings responded in unison. That's good. I'm very worried whether you will scare my daughter or pose a threat to my daughter. You think, should I clean you up too? Ning Yechen smiled slightly and spoke very softly, without the slightest hint of murderous intent. However, when these words fell into the ears of the three demons, it was like thunder exploding, and they were all ice cold. With a plop, the three demons hurriedly knelt on the ground, trembling and begging for mercy. Sir, please spare my life. I'll give you 10 nerves and I won't dare to offend you and your family. Ning Yechen looked thoughtful but said nothing. The three demons did not dare to move, quietly waiting for Ning Yechen's decision for them. The passage of every second of time feels particularly long for them. This may very well be their last time on Earth. After a while, Ning Yechen said to the three demons, "Remember what you said and take care of your men. If a monster scares my daughter, just wait and disappear from the world." After saying that, Ning Yechen disappeared from the place in a flash. Yes, the three demons still lay on the ground and did not dare to move. It was not until more than half an hour later that they cautiously raised their heads. After confirming that Ning Yechen had really left, he exhaled with lingering fear. There is a sense of joy in escaping death. No matter what they say, they will never come near that wooden house again. Terrible. When Ning Yechen rushed back to the wooden house, he noticed a beautiful figure speeding towards him in front of him. He smiled slightly, fell into the woods from midair, and walked slowly instead. After a while, Luo Ruiying hurriedly appeared in front of Ning Yechen. Great, I finally found you. Seeing that Ning Yechen was safe and sound, Luo Ruiying breathed a sigh of relief. But seeing his calm and carefree look, I couldn't help but feel angry. Worried that there were other monsters nearby, she first sent Luo Hongye home and then hurriedly came to find him. It turned out that he was doing well, looking very happy, without any sense of crisis at all. Luo Ruiying rolled her eyes at Ning Yechen with a slight reproach and said, "Next time, don't go and deal with bugs. It's dangerous around here. Are you so worried about your husband?" Ning Yechen asked knowingly. Luo Ruiying's face turned red as she said, "Shua," and she glared at Ning Yechen with a cute look. I just don't want the child to lose her father." "Huh, is it really just for the children?" Ning Yechen approached Luo Ruiying, with a meaningful smile on his face. The two of them are so close, their eyes are facing each other, and they only need to take one step forward to touch each other. Luo Ruiying's heartbeat involuntarily accelerated, she took a step back slightly, and her face became more blushing. Then he stared at Ning Yechen very unconvinced. This guy, even at this time, is still teasing her. How could she, a majestic empress of the fairy world, be teased by a mortal? It's really just for the kids. Okay, come back with me quickly. Luo Ruiying said something shy and angrily, turned around and left. Looking at Luo Ruiying's angry and arrogant back, Ning Yechen smiled slightly. He lowered his head and looked at his feet. An idea flashed in his mind, and he gently twisted his right foot. "Madam, my husband's foot was accidentally injured just now. I'm afraid we can't walk back." Ning Yechen took 2 steps with his feet and said regretfully to Luo Ruiying, who was walking in front of him. Luo Ruiying turned around when she heard this, her expression flashed with panic, and she hurried back to Ning Yechen, squatting down and checking his right foot. The bone in his right foot has been broken and the injury is very serious. It was clear that he was fine when he came over just now. Why did you just say it now? Really, not careful at all. What if I hadn't come to find you? Luo Ruiying blamed Ning Yechen very angrily, her eyes full of worry. With such a severed leg, if you unfortunately encounter a monster in the woods, you will really be dead. I'm really sorry for making you worry. Ning Yechen saw that Luo Ruiying was really angry because she was worried about him, but she was so happy that she never lowered the corners of her mouth. Luo Ruiying had no choice but to bandage and fix Ning Yechen's feet briefly, then squatted down with her back to him. "Come up, I'll carry you back. I don't know how many powerful monsters there are around here." The safest and fastest way was for her to go back with Ning Yechen on her back. Ning Yechen smiled evilly, as if his plan had succeeded, and he lay on Luo Ruiying's back without any ceremony, and put his arms around her neck. Luo Ruiying's back was very warm, and there was a light fragrance that smelled good on her body. Ning Yechen simply put his cheek to her back. Luo Rying's face turned red with embarrassment, but considering that Ning Yechen was injured and there was nothing that could be done about it, she didn't say anything. He jumped up and quickly flew through the woods in the direction of the wooden house. In just a few breaths, Luo Ruiying carried Ning Yechen back to the wooden house and let him sit on the bed. "Daddy, I worry about you every night." Seeing Ning Yechen coming back, Luo Hongye immediately flew into his arms and rubbed her cheek. "It makes our family worry every night." Ning Yechen hugged Luo Hongye lovingly and rubbed her little head. He didn't follow back, which made the little guy worried. Luo Ruiying looked at this scene with relief, smiled slightly, told Ning Yechen to stop running around, and then turned and left the wooden house. She was going back to the fairy medicine garden to pick some herbs to make healing ointment for Ning Yechen. By the way, she has to carefully inspect the monsters nearby and set up a barrier to isolate the wooden house. There is no security at all with just a cabin. There is not even a warning measure in advance. I don't know how that guy survived after living here for so long. Whenever you encounter monsters once, you may never encounter them again. She has to be responsible for protecting this family. There are many herbs in the fairy medicine garden, and Luo Ruiying quickly found all the herbs she needed. After that, Luo Ruiying began to patrol around the wooden house to ensure that there were no traces of any monster within a radius of 50 miles. After patrolling for more than half of the circle, Luo Ruiying felt increasingly strange. Not to mention a monster beast, she didn't even sense the breath of a monster beast. When she came here before, she could clearly sense a lot of. Why are they all gone all of a sudden? There is also a huge fairy medicine garden here. Such rich spiritual power and medicinal fragrance did not attract any monsters. This is really against common sense. There was no trace of the black-scaled giant dragon before. Strangeness. This unusual situation made Luo Ruiying frown. However, there were no monsters around, which was just as she wanted, saving her the time to deal with those monsters. Luo Ruiying took the opportunity to bury spirit stones 50 miles away, formed an array of spirit stones, and activated the spirit stones. The spiritual stones were connected to form a huge barrier array that surrounded the entire wooden house. After the barrier was formed, it turned from faint to transparent. Even if you look carefully, it is difficult to find that there is a barrier here. After doing all this, Luo Ruiying felt relieved. Although the barrier set up by her current cultivation level is not very powerful, it is definitely enough to block cultivation levels below the deity realm. When Luo Ruiying went back, the night had gradually darkened. Ning Yechen and Luo Hongye, father and daughter, were still playing and playing, raising their heads high. Seeing Luo Ruiying coming back, the two of them greeted in unison. "The lady is back, mother." Luo Ruiying nodded with a smile. Mei Mu looked around the room again, hesitated for a moment and then asked with a blushing face. How do you bathe here?" A few days after escaping from the fairy world, she had never taken a bath again. When she was in the fairy world, she had to bathe on time every day. It was very difficult for her to be unable to bathe for many days. She can go without eating or drinking, but she must not go without bathing. But she carefully observed that there were no wooden barrels for bathing in the house, and there was no bathroom with boiled water for bathing outside the house. This put Luo Ruiying, who wanted to take a bath, into trouble. When Ning Yechen heard that Luo Ruiying wanted to take a bath, she instantly became energetic. "Madam, you want to take a bath? I know a good place for my husband. I haven't showered in several days, I want to cleanse." Luo Ruiying nodded shyly and asked impatiently. "Where is the good place?" "Madam, there is a hot spring on a cliff about 2 or 3 miles southwest of the back mountain." Ning Yechen hugged Luo Hongye and said with a smile. "When? Hot spring?" As soon as she heard the word hot spring, Luo Ruiying's eyes lit up, and her face showed a look of anticipation. She originally thought that she would be satisfied if she could just boil a hot bath. After all, this place was incomparable to the Immortal Palace. But she didn't expect that there were hot springs to soak in this mountain forest. Ning Yechen nodded affirmatively. That hot spring was specially opened by him. The purpose of seclusion here is to enjoy life, and naturally you must have everything you should have. The dignified demon lord of the previous generation would never wrong himself. "Yay, let's go, mother will take you to take a bath." Luo Ruiying happily took Luo Hongye from Ning Yechen's hand. Madam, can I take a shower with my husband? Ning Yechen asked solemnly and seriously. He had never expected anything so much. Unfortunately, Luo Ruiying decisively rejected him without hesitation. No, Luo Ruiying blushed and hugged Luo Hongye as she walked out of the house and disappeared in a flash. Ning Yechen was left alone in the house. Ning Yechen shook his head in disappointment, hesitating whether to follow or not. If he followed me and peeped, wouldn't that be abnormal behavior? But then I thought about it, it shouldn't be perverted if a husband peeked at his wife taking a bath, right? In the woods, Luo Ruiying held Luo Hongye and flew excitedly. Luo Hongye, who was lying in her arms, raised her big eyes and looked at Luo Ruiying and asked in confusion. Mom, why don't you let Dad wash with us? It's so pitiful for Dad to stay at home alone. This. Luo Ruiying was speechless by Luo Hongye's words, and for a moment she didn't know how to explain. Although she has accepted Ning Yechen as her husband, it does not mean that she has reached the point where she can be honest with him. When she thought of the two of them naked in the bath, Luo Ruiying blushed and shook her head quickly. Even when she was bathing in the bathhouse as the Empress of the fairy world, she had never let any maid serve her, let alone bathing with a man. Under Luo Hongye's puzzled gaze, Luo Ruiying could only face her scalp, squeeze out a smile and explain. Because your father's foot is injured and it's inconvenient. Then mother can hold daddy and come here with her just like she held Ye. Luo Hongye asked innocently again. Luo Ruiying had no reason to refute, so she had to change her explanation. Mom has to concentrate on giving Yi a bath tonight, so I can't bring Dad with me. Is that so? Luo Hongye said regretfully. Seeing that Luo Hongye seemed to accept this reason, Luo Ruiying nodded quickly. Aha, Mom, I need to wash Yi well. It will take a long time. Luo Hongye's face was thoughtful. After a moment of silence, she raised her head and said to Luo Ruiying Nuo with firm eyes. Mom, I won't wash myself every night. Let mother and father wash together. Cough cough cough. When Luo Ruiying heard this, she almost stumbled and fell from the air. This kid. Next time, Mom will take a shower with your dad, okay? Tonight, my mother will help you clean up your innocence. Luo Ruiying couldn't convince Luo Hongye, so she had no choice but to agree first. Okay, then next time I have to take a bath with my mother and father every night, is that okay? Luo Hongye looked at Luo Hongye expectantly and asked. Good, what else could Luo Ruiying do? She could only agree with a wry smile. It will be fine after a few days when the child forgets. During the conversation, Luo Ruiying jumped up to a cliff. On the cliff, there are dense woods and a trail. Walking along the path deeper into the woods, after a while, a steaming hot spring that was several feet wide appeared in front of us. There are real hot springs. Luo Ruiying looked surprised. First, she helped Luo Hongye take off her clothes and let her enter the hot spring. Mom, the water is so warm, come down quickly. Luo Hongye happily splashed back and forth in the hot spring and waved to Luo Ruiying on the shore. Luo Ruiying smiled slightly, stretched out her hand and took off her fairy skirt and underwear. An exquisite and graceful body with black hair draped around her body was bathed in the bright moonlight, standing in the rising mist, and could be seen dimly. Someone hiding in the tree couldn't help but be fascinated. After careful consideration, Ning Yechen decided to follow him secretly. But don't get me wrong, he's not here to peep, but to protect Luo Ruiying and her daughter secretly. If anything happens, he can take action secretly and in time, right? Just as Luo Ruiying was about to step into the hot spring with her lotus feet, she suddenly turned her head and looked behind her, her beautiful eyes looking back and forth closely. I don't know if it was her imagination, but it felt like there was a gaze staring at her all the time. She has set up a barrier within a radius of 50 miles, and neither monsters nor others should be able to enter. Could it be that guy? Luo Ruiying's first reaction was to think of Ning Yechen, but she quickly shook her head and denied it. Not long after she arrived, she took Luo Hongye all the way. How could Ning Yechen, who was injured at his feet, be able to follow? It can't be him. It should just be her illusion. Luo Ruiying didn't think anymore and soaked her whole body in the warm hot spring, with a look of comfort on her face. Suddenly it seemed like I was alive again. Luo Hongye swam obediently into Luo Rying's arms, sat in front of her, and let her wipe her body and hair with a happy face. Ning Yechen sat on a branch and stared silently at the mother and daughter bathing in the hot spring with a smile on her face. There were no unnecessary distractions in my mind. But when Luo Ruiying stood up from the hot spring, Ning Yechen couldn't stop bleeding from her nose. After hundreds of years, no one had ever caused him to bleed, but he was injured again in this way. Nearly half an hour later, the satisfied Luo Ruiying took Luo Hongye back to the wooden house after taking a bath. Luo Ruiying, who had just finished bathing, had her shawl loose, her wet black hair shimmering and hanging down around her waist, and her delicate face showed a rosy complexion. When Ning Yechen saw this, he inadvertently recalled the erotic scene he had just seen inadvertently in his mind, and blood flowed from his nose again. "Why do you have a nosebleed?" Luo Ruiying walked up to Ning Yechen and asked with a worried look on her face. She was afraid that he might have suffered any other injuries and kept it from her. Ning Yechen turned his head for the first time in embarrassment and explained. "It's okay for my husband, don't worry. I'm just a little angry. Mortals are so fragile. It's just that I got angry, and so much blood was shed." Luo Ruiying took out a handkerchief and wiped Ning Yechen's nosebleed, then knelt down and grabbed his right foot. He took out various herbs picked from his arms, put them into his mouth, chewed them up, spit them out, and applied them directly to the broken foot. Finally, take out the bandage and wrap it up. These fairy grass elixirs have a strong medicinal effect on injured muscles and broken bones. They do not need to be specially refined. They can be effective just by chewing them and applying them externally. Don't move around these days. The injured foot will recover in 2 days, don't worry. Luo Ruiying said happily. This was also thanks to the fairy medicine garden in the back mountain, otherwise she would not have been able to cure Ning Yechen's broken foot. "Thank you, madam." Ning Yechen smiled gratefully. In fact, as long as he is willing, he can recover his broken foot in just 1 second. But if you can be cared for and taken care of by a beautiful woman, you won't be in a hurry to recover. Luo Ruiying was a little embarrassed by the gratitude, and said with a slight blush. "It's getting late, you should go to bed early." "Okay, sleep." Hearing that she was sleeping, Luo Hongye happily threw herself on the soft couch and buried her head in the quilt. She stuck out her little head and looked expectantly at Luo Ruiying, who was standing in front of the bed, and said with a smile, "Mom, sleep together." Forehead. Luo Ruiying glanced at Ning Yechen sitting on the edge of the bed, and said embarrassedly, "Yay, the bed is not very big. Can you sleep with Daddy tonight?" "Mom, just sleep down there." Luo Hongye had already climbed into bed. To sleep with her would mean sharing the same bed with Ning Yechen. She had never slept with a man before, even if he was her husband, but she was not ready yet. This home belonged to Ning Yechen, and since he was injured, she would definitely give him her bed. She also couldn't bear to let Luo Hongye sleep on the floor with her, so she had to let Luo Hongye and Ning Yechen sleep together. "Don't you, mother, sleep with your father every night?" "I want to sleep with my mother and father every night." Luo Hongye looked disappointed and looked at Luo Ruiying with her big eyes. Looking at Luo Hongye's expectant eyes, Luo Ruiying could not say any more words of rejection, so she had no choice but to compromise and responded with a smile. "All right, Mom and Daddy sleep together every night." Ning Yechen immediately cast an approving look at Luo Hongye and secretly gave a thumbs up. "Here you go, my baby girl." Luo Hongye also showed a sly smile on her pretty face. Luo Ruiying took off her coat and put on a close-fitting, thin white silk nightgown, which outlined her exquisite and proud figure. "You, just sleep inside." Luo Ruiying looked shy and pointed to the inside of the bed to Ning Yechen. In this way, with the child in between, she was less nervous. "Good," Ning Yechen responded with a smile. He did not rush to climb onto the bed, but stood up and took off his coat. But he didn't wear any pajamas underneath, only a pair of white pants. A strong, graceful, smooth and white body with almost no flaws was revealed in front of Luo Ruiying. Okay, what a perfect figure. Luo Ruiying couldn't help but stare blankly. Is this really the body and shape of a mortal hunter? How could it be so perfect and full of power? Could it be that he has such a good physique because he has been hunting and exercising in the mountains all year round and consuming a lot of ingredients made from fairy grass elixirs? Luo Ruiying guessed in her heart. This guess is reasonable. The elixir of heaven and earth jelly grass itself has the effect of removing impurities from the body. In addition, he lives in the mountains and forests all year round. It is not surprising that he has developed such a physique. Madam, what are you looking at? Ning Yechen looked at the dull-looking Luo Ruiying and said with a smile. Luo Ruiying woke up from a dream. When she came back to her senses, she realized that she was staring at a man's body in trance, and her face instantly turned red with shame. He quickly glanced away and asked softly, why did you take off your clothes suddenly? Because my husband always sleeps naked. Ning Yechen said with an innocent look. Naked, sleeping naked. No. When Luo Ruiying heard this, she looked panicked and shy, and immediately retorted. Why? Ning Yechen said in confusion. My child is still here. Luo Ruiying pursed her red lips and stared at Ning Yechen with a red face. Ning Yechen suddenly understood, smiled meaningfully, nodded, and put on his clothes silently. Whether the child is alive or not, my husband understands. Okay, husband, just put it on now. Luo Ruiying's pretty face was confused. What does he know? Luo Hongye sat on the bed, looking at Ning Yechen and Luo Ruiying with big curious eyes. Why doesn't mother allow father to take off his clothes and sleep? Ning Yechen rubbed Luo Hongye's little head, climbed onto the bed, lay down on the inside of the bed, and held her in his arms. Luo Hongye's petite figure held her as if she were really holding a doll. Luo Ruiying gently blew out the oil lamp in the room, lay sideways on the bed, and hugged Luo Hongye from behind. The room was dark and silent. Luo Hongye was hugged by Ning Yechen and Luo Ruiying with one arm on each side. She fell into a deep sleep with a happy smile on her face. Luo Ruiying quietly stared at the sleeping Luo Hongye, with a sweet smile on her face, and caressed her cheek lovingly. Since giving birth to Luo Hongye, in order to prevent her from being discovered, she often secretly locked her in the closet alone, and even wanted to sleep peacefully with her without fear. After escaping from the fairy world, he ran day and night, and the pursuit never stopped. Now I can finally let this little guy sleep well. Luo Ruiying thought happily. At this moment, in the darkness, a hand suddenly touched her back. Luo Ruiying was startled and quickly confirmed the origin of the palm. Apart from her and the child, there was only one other person left on the bed. The bed was not big, barely enough space for 3 people to lie flat on their backs. Luo Ruiying and Ning Yechen were sleeping on their sides, holding Luo Hongye in their arms and very close to each other. Stretch your head slightly and your foreheads can touch each other. Why did Ning Yechen's arms suddenly cross over from Luo Hongye and hug her waist directly? Luo Ruiying raised her head in surprise and looked at Ning Yechen quietly. I saw that his breathing was steady, his sleeping face was peaceful, and he seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. Did he just accidentally bump into her while sleeping? Luo Ruiying breathed a sigh of relief. The moment Ning Yechen touched her, her little heart beat violently, which startled her. As soon as Luo Ruiying relaxed, Ning Yechen put one foot on her body and hugged her waist tighter. Luo Ruiying couldn't help but glared at Ning Yechen, who was sleeping. Why does this guy have such a bad sleeping posture? Early next morning, Luo Ruiying opened her eyes leisurely, and as soon as she opened her eyes, she saw a handsome face in front of her. The sleeping Ning Yechen was very close to her, so close that she could even feel his slight breath. One of Ning Yechen's arms was used as a pillow for Luo Hongye, who was sleeping between them, while the other hand was placed between Luo Ruiying's hips. There was also one foot that was resting on her body all night long. Luo Ruiying frowned slightly and made fists with her hands, wanting to teach this guy a lesson for sleeping in such a bad posture. She didn't know how many times she took Ning Yechen's feet off her body last night, only to quickly put them up again. After tossing and tossing, she finally gave up. Forget it, she endured it. This guy has bad hands. Luo Ruiying clenched her fists and hesitated for a moment, but finally loosened her fists helplessly. I'll let this guy go this time. He fell asleep, not on purpose, forget it. Moreover, she and the child rarely had a peaceful sleep last night. Luo Ruiying gently moved Ning Yechen's hands and feet away, climbed up the bed gently and slowly, biting the hairpin in her mouth, sat on the edge of the bed and tied up her hair. Ning Yechen secretly opened her eyes, admiring Luo Rying's delicate back, and couldn't help but smile. My wife looks so beautiful when she wears her hair. When Luo Ruiying put her hair up and turned around, Ning Yechen quickly closed her eyes again. Looking at Ning Yechen, who was sleeping soundly with a smile on her lips, Luo Ruiying felt curious and amused. This guy must have dreamed of something good. He was still smiling so happily when he fell asleep. Luo Ruiying lowered her head and saw that Luo Hongye also had a sweet smile on her face, and she smiled helplessly. This child is just like her father. Luo Ruiying looked at the two people on the bed fondly, put on her clothes and went to the kitchen to get busy without making a sound. Although she could go without food or drink, the child was still young and Ning Yechen was just a mortal. As a woman, she naturally had to shoulder the responsibility of taking care of them. While Luo Ruiying was busy, Ning Yechen squatted at the door of his house and brushed his teeth while holding the awake Luo Hongye. Although Luo Hongye didn't understand what she was doing, she still learned to brush her teeth with a slender brush happily and curiously. Luo Ruiying glanced curiously at the two people squatting at the door not knowing what to do, and shook her head helplessly. I don't know what that guy is teaching the child. But seeing that the father and daughter were happy, she didn't care. After a while, Luo Ruiying prepared a table of meals and shouted to the two people who were still playing around outside the house. It's time to eat. He, mother, here we come. Luo Hongye rode on Ning Yechen's shoulders and walked into the house. There was a flower on Ning Yechen's head. Yay, don't mess around. Luo Ruiying almost couldn't help laughing when she looked at Ning Yechen with flowers on her head, and hurriedly took Luo Hongye off Ning Yechen who was riding on her shoulders. Ning Yechen didn't take it seriously, but was very happy and sat down at the table with a smile. The dishes on the table are also made from some crops and herbs picked in the fairy medicine garden. It was probably because he was worried that his body would not be able to tolerate the overpowering medicinal herb elixir. Luo Ruiying used basically the types that were older and would not cause serious harm to ordinary people. It can be said that he is very careful. Even if he eats whatever he wants, nothing will happen. Because Luo Hongye was too young, she could only sit in Luo Ruiying's arms, lie on the table and bury her head in the bowl, eating until her face was covered with rice grains. Luo Ruiying lovingly took out her handkerchief and wiped Luo Hongye's mouth, and then took the initiative to feed her little by little. Come on, eat more every night. Madam, you have worked hard too. Ning Yechen picked up the vegetables and put them into Luo Hongye and Luo Ruiying's bowls. The corners of Luo Ruiying's mouth raised slightly with an imperceptible arc, and she picked up a dish and handed it to Ning Yechen. You too. What I made may not be that delicious, you try it. Luo Ruiying's original intention was to put it into Ning Yechen's bowl, but Ning Yechen didn't expect that Ning Yechen would just put his head over and eat it in one bite. After eating, he smiled and praised. Well, my wife's craftsmanship is very good. Beyond my husband's expectations. This is Ning Yechen's true thoughts. Unexpectedly, Luo Ruiying, who is a fairy in the fairy world, is also very good at cooking. She already looks like a good wife and mother. The feeding turned into oral feeding, and a slight blush appeared on Luo Ruiying's cheeks. Why did he even take her chopsticks into his mouth? When Luo Hongye saw this scene, she also raised her head and looked at Luo Ruiying with her mouth wide open and said in a milky voice. I want it every night, ah. Okay. Luo Ruiying smiled slightly, picked up the vegetables and fed it into Luo Hongye's mouth. Ning Yechen also lovingly picked up the vegetables and fed them into Luo Hongye's mouth in turn. Luo Hongye refused to refuse anyone who came, eating with bulging cheeks and a smile on her face. Luo Ruiying looked at the peaceful and happy scene of a family of 3 gathering around the table to eat, and a happy and satisfied smile appeared on her face. This was a feeling she had never felt before when she was an empress. It would be great if I could always hide here in the future and live in seclusion here with him and my children for the rest of my life. It's okay if the Empress of the Immortal Realm doesn't do it. Outskirts of the demonic forest. 4 figures gathered outside, staring fiercely at the endless demon forest. Old ghost, are you sure they are hiding in this demon forest? A man in green robes and sword robes raised his eyebrows and asked an old man with a stooped figure and spots on his face. Jia, could it be that Lu Zhanxian looks down on my ghost hunting skills? The ghost husband smiled ferociously, holding a terrifying-looking puppet in his hand. The ghost infant puppet held a piece of hair in its mouth and stared at the distance of the demon forest. Who in the world doesn't know the ghost hunting skills of the old man? As long as you get something on a person, you can track it thousands of miles away. It seems that the fairy girl is hiding in this demon forest. Another brawny man with naked upper body said with a burst of heroic laughter. There are countless demon kings deep in the demon realm forest. If they are really hiding in the demon realm forest, it may not be that easy to bring them back. A man dressed as a Confucian scholar said with a slight frown. Are the palace masters of the world's Confucian palaces afraid? The strong man looked at Su Sheng and sneered. Su Sheng frowned and looked at the strong man with an unkind look. HMPH. Even the master of the martial arts temple is not afraid, but I, the Confucian palace under heaven, are afraid. It's ridiculous. So, Palace Master Su wants to compete with me. Wu Kuang stared at Su Sheng feverishly, his body emitting a powerful aura that soared to the sky. Su Sheng also showed no signs of weakness and released an aura that was no weaker than Wu Kuang. Enough. The purpose of the four of us gathering here is not to compete to win or lose. Don't forget why everyone is here. Lu Jian stood between Su Sheng and Wu Kuang with his sword, and scolded with a stern expression. When Su Sheng and Wu Kuang heard this, they immediately put away their aura. Compared with the competition between the two of them, they have a very important mission here. Capture the mother and daughter named Luo Ruiying and Luo Hongye. No matter life or death. Lu Jian, Su Sheng, Wei Fu, and Wu Kuang, the four of them are the top sect leaders in the world. It can be said that they are the four people with nearly the highest cultivation level in the human world. It is one step away from breaking through the realm and ascending to immortality. There is only one purpose for the four of them to gather here, a promise made to them by a certain upper world adult. As long as they catch Luo Ruiying and her daughter who have escaped from the fairy world, they will not only help them ascend to the fairy world, but they can also directly join them. There is no better temptation than being able to join such a powerful force once you ascend to the immortal realm. They have also obtained information about Luo Ruiying's mother and daughter. Luo Ruiying was once the Empress of the immortal world, but now she is seriously injured and her cultivation has fallen below the realm of heaven and human beings. For the four of them, the world's top players, this is a job that is not difficult at all. Let's go, let's make a quick decision. It's best if the other party cooperates obediently. If they don't cooperate, just kill them directly. Remember, you can't kill that girl, you have to take her back. Lu Jian looked stern and took the lead in turning into a divine rainbow and speeding towards the depths of the demon realm forest. It shouldn't be too easy for him to deal with a celestial being. The other three people looked at each other, showed a proud smile, and turned into divine rainbows to chase after them. After a while, Lu Jian and the others reached the depths of the demon realm forest. A large number of monsters can be felt outside the monster forest, and from time to time there are monsters that do not know whether to live or die and attack them. The strange thing is that after reaching the depths of the monster forest, not a single monster was found. The depths of the demon realm forest are known as the territory of hundreds of demon kings. Anyone who enters will die. But now, not even a demon king is seen. It's too unusual to be quiet. The four of them, Lu Jian and others, stood in the air, looking closely around the demon realm forest, but there was no one around. Old ghost, use your ghost baby puppet to track the opponent's specific location. Lu Jian frowned and asked the ghost husband beside him. Without a specific location, it would be quite difficult to find two people deep in the demon forest. The ghost husband's ugly face showed a sneer, and he said very embarrassedly. My ghost baby puppet only senses the vicinity, and the specific location is unknown. Tisk. The ghost infant puppet who claims to be chasing souls thousands of miles away is nothing more than that. Su Sheng smacked his lips and said disdainfully. The ghost husband just smiled and did not refute. Wu Kuang ignored everyone and seemed to have discovered something. He flew down into the forest and found a forest leaf with a touch of dried blood on it. He is particularly sensitive to the smell of blood, and even a slight smell of blood cannot escape his nose. As soon as he arrived, he vaguely smelled a different smell of blood. Wu Kuang plucked the leaves stained with blood and put them into his mouth to taste them carefully, his expression gradually becoming excited. As expected of the blood of a fairy from the upper world, the taste is just different. This smell really makes me thirsty. When everyone in Lujian saw Wu Kuang's excited and enthusiastic look, they all showed disgust. Rumor has it that this guy loves to drink blood, especially the blood of strong men. Every time he kills someone, he will drink the blood of the other person. But it was precisely because of him that Luo Rying's traces were finally discovered. At least one thing is certain, that woman must be hiding in this demon forest. As long as this is confirmed, it is only a matter of time to find her. Let's search separately. Whoever finds it first will send a signal. Lu Jian said to the other 3 people. Although the other 3 people were unhappy with Lu Jian giving them orders, they didn't say much and dispersed silently. After all, the order from the superior in the upper world is more important. If they fail to bring Luo Ruiying and her daughter back, not only will they not be able to ascend to the immortal realm, they will even be killed because they offended the lord of the upper realm. In a certain cave, the Chaos Bull Demon, the Titan Giant Ape, and the sky-swallowing Divine Python silently watched as Lu Jian and the 4 separated. Someone is here again. Such an unscrupulous rampage in our demon forest is simply too much. Do you want to go deal with those people? The Titan Ape suggested to the other 2 angrily. Are you crazy? What if they are also the Lord's people? It's not like you haven't seen how Zhang Lin died. The heaven-swallowing Divine Python said with a horrified expression. Whenever she recalled Ning Yechen's face, she couldn't help but tremble all over. The Chaos Bull Demon and the Titan Giant Ape also fell silent. If it was 100 years ago, they would have gone up and killed those people without hesitation. But now they dare not take the risk. Not afraid of those 4 people, but afraid of that adult. Forget it, let's just pretend we didn't see it. That's it, let's play cards. Okay. The 3 Chaos Bull Demons walked back to the cave arm in arm with the same opinion. The Demon Kings have always been incompatible with each other in order to compete for territory. Who would have thought that 3 Demon Kings would live together in such harmony? The other side. After separating from Lu Jian and others, the ghost husband smiled cunningly and immediately secretly took out the ghost baby puppet and galloped away in the direction pointed by the puppet's gaze. His ghost baby puppet can naturally track the specific location. The reason why Lu Jian and the other 3 were not told was of course because they wanted to take all the credit. If he could take down Luo Ruiying and his daughter alone and hand them over to the master in the upper realm, he would definitely get extra generous rewards. Maybe you can even enjoy the dream of ascending to the fairy world. By then, it will be easy to destroy the other 3 major sects. Thinking of this, Wei Fu couldn't help but laugh out loud. Not long after, the ghost husband's expression condensed, he stopped, looked forward, and slowly stretched out his withered palm. It was as if his palm was pressed against a layer of completely transparent and invisible glass, and he could no longer move forward an inch. Enchantment. Jehieji, I found it. The ghost husband tilted his head, with an excited and ecstatic smile on his face. The barrier is placed here, which means that she is inside. This small barrier cannot stop me. The old man's palm that was pressed against the barrier gushed out with thick black liquid. The black liquid flowed down the barrier, and the barrier suddenly seemed to melt and a big hole was eroded by the black liquid. The ghost husband effortlessly crossed the barrier and entered it without even making a sound. He had to hurry up before those idiots like Lu Jian noticed it. At this time, Ning Yeshan, who was fighting with Luo Hongye in the wooden house, suddenly frowned and showed an unhappy look. Why is someone here again? He also destroyed the barrier that his wife had finally set up. I wonder if what he hates most right now is someone interrupting the time he spends with his wife and children. Outside the wooden house, after finishing the meal, Luo Ruiying walked out of the room holding the dishes she had packed away. Looking at the dishes and chopsticks piled up at her feet, Luo Ruiying frowned slightly, and first squatted down to wash them like an ordinary mortal. After discovering that the efficiency was too slow, he simply used his spiritual power to lift all the bowls and chopsticks together with the water into the air and rotate them at high speed in the air. In the blink of an eye, all the dishes and chopsticks were cleaned, and the dirty water was separated by her. After that, Luo Ruiying chopped firewood and washed her clothes in the same way. All the work was completed in less than a few minutes. Luo Ruiying put her hands on her hips and nodded with satisfaction. She couldn't help but praise herself in her heart. Although this is my first time doing this kind of thing, I am still pretty awesome. From now on, all these tasks will be handed over to her, so that guy can relax a little bit. At this moment, an unpleasant old hoarse voice suddenly sounded. Gia, 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 I didn't expect that fairies in the fairy world would do such chores like women. Luo Ruiying suddenly turned her head and looked at the rickety old man walking slowly. She was startled and felt a crisis coming. Someone broke through the barrier she set up. She didn't even notice it. The other party seems to be a strong man at the peak of the god realm. It seemed like the other party came to see her specifically. After escaping here, are you still unwilling to let her go? Luo Ruiying was filled with grief and anger, and she clenched her fists tightly. She just wants to live a stable life like this, but it's all a luxury. I would like to ask if the fairy will follow me obediently, or will I take you back myself? The ghost husband stretched out his palm, and the terrifying and gloomy spiritual power filled the air from his body. The vegetation under his feet instantly withered, and the earth was dyed black. The whole body exudes an extremely strong miasma. Luo Ruiying looked thoughtful and hesitated in her heart. If he was the only one, she might not be able to kill him here. Just fighting here, no wonder it would affect her children and him. Mother. By coincidence, Luo Hongye in the room happily ran to Luo Ruiying for a hug with her short legs. After seeing the ghost husband, Luo Hongye was afraid and subconsciously hid behind Luo Ruiying. Ning Yechen also walked slowly from the room to Luo Ruiying's side at this time, staring at the ghost husband with cold eyes. The ghost husband was overjoyed to see Luo Hongye. The adult in the upper world specifically pointed out that he wanted this child. What surprised the ghost husband was that besides Luo Ruiying and Luo Hongye, there was another man. There was no mention of a man in the information. There is no spiritual power fluctuation in his body, and he looks like he is just a lowly mortal. Nothing to fear. Gia, 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 I didn't expect that the arrogant fairy fell into the mortal world and immediately threw herself into the arms of a man. The ghost husband guessed that this wooden house was Ning Yechen's house, and that Luo Ruiying was just staying and hiding here temporarily, so he couldn't help but sarcastically said. It's so ridiculous that a fairy from the fairy world gets married to a mortal from the human world. Luo Ruiying frowned deeply, but instead of getting angry, she said in a deep voice. I'll go back with you. As long as you let the child go with him. After much thought, Luo Ruiying finally decided to give up herself to save her children and Ning Yechen. She was extremely reluctant to give up, but there was no other way. Even if she defeats the person in front of her, no matter what, those people in the fairy world will never let her go. The enemies that come next time will only be stronger. What awaits her is still an endless pursuit of escape. She couldn't keep running away like this with her child, nor could she involve Ning Yechen. If she could save her child and Ning Yechen by sacrificing her, she would be happy. Mother, mother, oh, don't leave mother every night. When Luo Hongye heard that Luo Ruiying was about to take the initiative to leave, she burst into tears and clutched her dress tightly. Luo Ruiying looked at Luo Hongye at her feet, her eyes showing all kinds of reluctance and love, and she couldn't help but get wet. If she could, how could she be willing to leave her child? What a touching mother-daughter relationship. Don't worry, fairy, if you want to go back with me, that girl will also go back with me. As for that man, I will kill him. The ghost husband laughed sinisterly and interrupted. You. When Luo Ruiying heard this, her delicate face became cold and she was so angry that her nails dug into her palms and blood flowed out. She has already given in like this and still refuses to let go of her children and husband. Luo Ruiying bent down to pick up Luo Hongye and put her into Ning Yechen's arms, with a hint of tenderness in her solemn eyes. Leave this place to me. You can take the children and escape into the woods and leave. Promise me not to let the child get hurt. I will follow you after solving the problem. If you still can't wait for me, you don't have to wait for me anymore. After that, Luo Ruiying didn't give Ning Yechen a chance to speak. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed his lips gently. This was the first time the two of them kissed while both were sober. Ning Yechen's eyes widened slightly in surprise. Husband, I leave the child to you. The red lips parted, and Luo Ruiying whispered softly into Ning Yechen's ear, full of tenderness. This is also the first time she calls Ning Yechen like this. Because it will probably be the last time. She had only been with Ning Yechen for less than 3 days. Although there were some things that made her dissatisfied, he was really good to her and the children. The kids also like him very much. She has already recognized him as her husband in her heart. So she wanted to muster up the courage to scream at the last moment of separation. It can be considered that Luo Hongye was handed over to him with peace of mind in a real sense. Ning Yechen felt happy and helpless at the same time. Why is it that it's like parting from life or death? Take the kids away quickly. Luo Ruiying stirred up the breeze with a palm of her hand, and lifted Ning Yechen and the child into the air, falling far into the woods behind the mountain. It would be too naive to try to escape from me. The ghost husband flicked his sleeves, and 4 puppets that were neither human nor ghost chased towards the back mountain, exuding a thick miasma. How could Luo Ruiying let these puppets chase after her? She quickly drew out her fairy sword, flew in front of the puppets, and chopped a puppet to pieces with the cold light of her sword. The other 3 puppets quickly passed by her, ignoring her at all. Luo Ruiying was anxious, her figure flashed momentarily, and she swung the fairy sword in her hand and shot out 3 sharp sword lights. The sword light passed through the puppets and cut 3 puppets in half. The ghost husband grabbed Luo Ruiying's gap and slapped her back hard with his poisonous palm. A trace of blood dripped from the corner of Luo Ruiying's mouth. She endured the severe pain and chopped the other 3 puppets into pieces with her sword. No matter what, she must not let any puppet escape from her. Otherwise, Ning Yechen and her child would be in danger. Jia, I would rather receive a slap from me than kill my puppet. It seems you care about them very much. Don't worry, after I kill you, none of them can escape. The ghost husband let out a sinister and proud smile. Luo Ruiying was injured and poisoned, and he already felt that he had a chance to win. The dream of immortality and ascension is right in front of you. Luo Ruiying's face was cold, her eyes were determined and filled with murderous intent, and she held her sword in front of the ghost husband. Yeah, then you will die today. In the woods, Ning Yechen slowly fell from midair to the ground while holding Luo Hongye. A fierce fight was already taking place in the wooden house not far away, and sword lights and black mist miasma could be seen rising up. This little girl is really. I always think about sacrificing myself to protect my children. Ning Yechen stood up with Luo Hongye in his arms, thinking about how to deal with these ignorant ants without being discovered. As the former demon lord of the demon realm, he is the mortal enemy of the immortal realm. And Luo Ruiying is from the fairy world. If he exposes his identity directly in person, her attitude towards him will inevitably change. What he is worried about is that she will take the child and leave him directly, so she is trying not to reveal her identity now. Ooh, Daddy, let's not leave mother behind, okay? Don't leave your mother every night. Lying in Ning Yechen's arms, Luo Hongye sobbed and begged to Ning Yechen, her big eyes red from crying. Be good every night and don't cry. Daddy promises you that your mother will be fine. Daddy will never abandon your mother. Ning Yechen felt distressed and reached out to wipe the tears from Luo Hongye's face, coaxing softly and comfortingly. But a cold and icy murderous intention flashed in his eyes. It made my daughter cry. None of these guys can get out of here alive. Is what Dad said true? Luo Hongye stopped crying and asked seriously. Ning Yechen smiled and nodded. How could Dad lie to Yi? Then Daddy, let's go find Mom quickly. Luo Hongye said impatiently. As soon as he finished speaking, a deep voice suddenly sounded from the woods ahead. Where are you going? Wu Kuang slowly walked out of the dim woods and looked at Ning Yechen and Luo Hongye with a playful expression. His eyes were mainly focused on Luo Hongye, whose grin revealed a row of silver teeth. I knew this guy Gui Lao wanted to secretly steal the credit. Fortunately, I kept an eye out and followed you here quietly. It takes no effort at all, ha ha ha. Wu Kuang raised his head and laughed excitedly, then stretched out his palm, looked at Ning Yechen with cold eyes, and said. Boy, please give that child to me. I will let you die happily. Luo Hongye shrank into Ning Yechen's arms in fear, raised her eyes and looked at Ning Yechen timidly. It was as if he was afraid that Ning Yechen would really not want her and hand her over to this rough and tumble bad guy. Ning Yechen saw Luo Hongye's fear, smiled softly, stroked the back of her head, and whispered softly in her ear. Yay, can you close your eyes and plug your ears for a while? Daddy, give Yi a magic. Luo Hongyi's big eyes were full of doubts, but she still closed her eyes obediently and blocked her ears with her immature hands. So good. Ning Yechen smiled, and when he looked at Wu Kuang, his expression instantly turned extremely cold, as if he was looking at a dead person. For some reason, Wu Kuang felt a chill all over his body, and fear arose in his heart. He didn't know how long it had been since he felt fear, but he was frightened by a mortal with no cultivation. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. His arrogant self-esteem will never allow it. He wants to kill the person in front of him. A mere ant dares to look at me like that. Court death. Wu Kuang bent his legs, and his ejected figure turned into an afterimage, and instantly arrived in front of Ning Yechen. His thick iron fist roared and hit Ning Yechen's face with a punch as sharp as a blade. This punch was enough to blow his head to pieces. There was a loud bang, and the imagined scene of his head exploding did not happen. The powerful punch was easily caught by a slender palm. Wu Kuang's expression was dull and his eyes were full of disbelief. Although he didn't use all his strength, this punch was enough to crack mountains and crack the ground, but it was easily blocked by the palm of the mortal in front of him. This guy is definitely not a mortal. Wu Kuang was shocked and realized that Ning Yechen was definitely a practitioner who had hidden his strength, and his strength was definitely not inferior to him. You, who the hell are you? Wu Kuang wanted to take his hand back, but found that no matter how hard he tried, his fist was still held in Ning Yechen's hand and did not move at all. Ning Yechen's eyes were full of disdain and murderous intent. He did not answer Wu Kuang's question, but said lightly, I don't want my daughter to see the bloody and cruel side. So it's an advantage for you. You can disappear from this world. After saying that, Ning Yechen grabbed Wu Kuang's palm and suddenly a ball of pitch-black flame shot up. The black flames spread along Wu Kuang's arms to his whole body, swallowing him completely. Wu Kuang instantly began to melt his skin and bones, his whole body melted, and he couldn't help but let out a miserable wail. The soul in the body was also distorted by the pain of black flames, until it was completely destroyed in a moment. Ning Yechen was worried that Wu Kuang's screams would frighten Luo Hongye, so he casually cast a soundproof barrier to wrap Wu Kuang inside. The whole process only took a few seconds, and Wu Kuang disappeared from the world, leaving not even ashes behind. When Ning Yechen let go of Luo Hongye's ears, Luo Hongye slowly opened his eyes and looked around curiously, but Wu Kuang was nowhere to be found. He couldn't help but raise his head and asked Ning Yechen curiously, Dad, where is the big bad guy? Daddy used magic to make the big bad guy disappear. Ning Yechen smiled. When Luo Hongye heard this, her eyes suddenly lit up, her big eyes filled with admiration. Daddy is so annoying. Yay. Don't tell others about the fact that Daddy can use magic to make bad guys disappear, okay? Ning Yechen knelt down and put down Luo Hongye, pulled her and said, Mom, can't you tell me too? Luo Hongye tilted her head and asked doubtfully. Yeah, don't tell your mother either. Ning Yechen nodded. This made Luo Hongye's face full of confusion. Why can't you tell Mom and Dad? Well, because Daddy wants to have a little secret with Ye. This is a little secret between Dad and Ye. You can't tell others little secrets. Ning Yechen had an idea and found an excuse. When Luo Hongye heard this, the doubts on her face immediately disappeared, and she turned to a happy smile. Daddy and Yi's little secret. Ye knows. I don't tell my mother every night, and I don't tell anyone else. Hey, our family is so good every night. Ning Yechen rubbed Luo Hongye's face in praise. Sure enough. Children are easy to coax. Yay, please wait here obediently. Daddy is going to help your mother fight the bad guys. He will be back soon. Ning Yechen took Luo Hongye to a tree and drew a barrier formation around it. Luo Hongye nodded obediently and said worriedly, Daddy, be careful when beating bad guys. Ning Yechen showed a very confident and reassuring smile. Don't worry every night, no one in this world can be your father's opponent. On the other side, outside the wooden house, Luo Ruiying, who was suffering from the miasma poison, was still desperately trying to kill the ghost husband. However, the miasma poison continued to spread in her body. Luo Ruiying's body felt weaker and weaker, and her vision gradually became blurred. Jia, it seems that the daughter of the fairy world is nothing more than this. If you continue to forcefully use the spiritual power in your body, the miasma will corrode your entire body, and you will begin to fester and die from within your body. The ghost husband smiled proudly at Luo Ruiying. Seeing that Luo Ruiying's face was gradually turning green, and she was completely losing her strong aura just now, he knew that the miasma had begun to take effect. Luo Ruiying no longer poses any threat to him. HMPH. Before that, I will kill you first. Luo Ruiying held up her weak body, took an arrow step, and flew towards the ghost husband again with her sword in hand. It is not easy for a strong man at the peak of the god realm to catch up with a mortal with a child. For the safety of Ning Yechen and her children, she must kill this person here. Even if we die together with him. The ghost husband was really frightened when he saw Luo Ruiying quickly dodging towards her, slashing her head with a sharp sword light. This was the first time he saw the miasma spreading all over his body, and he dared to use his spiritual power without regard for his own safety. This crazy woman really wants to take him down before she dies. At the moment when Luo Ruiying's sword light slashed down, Gui Fu's whole body was wrapped in miasma. The sword light split the miasma, but Gui Fu was no longer around. The miasma that was split by Luo Ruiying continued to spread, wrapping her whole body in it. There was thick and invisible miasma poison in all directions. Luo Ruiying quickly reached out to cover her mouth and nose, her eyes wandering in the mist of miasma. She could feel that the ghost husband was hidden in this miasmatic mist. Aha! A figure quickly flashed through the fog. Found it. Luo Ruiying's eyes were like a torch, and the moment the figure appeared again, she slashed out the fairy sword in her hand. The brilliant sword light cut the figure in half. Success! Luo Ruiying was overjoyed. The next second, a palm suddenly appeared from the fog behind him and struck. Luo Ruiying noticed it immediately and immediately turned around to block it with a horizontal sword. Unexpectedly, another palm came out of the mist and slapped her heavily on the abdomen. Puff! Luo Ruiying vomited a mouthful of blood, flew out of the miasma mist, and fell to the ground clutching her abdomen. Jehieji, you have been deceived, fairy. The ghost husband slowly walked out of the miasma fog, with a ferocious and proud smile on his face. Behind him were dozens of ghost corpse puppets that he had refined and transformed. The one that hit Luo Ruiying's chest was one of the ghost corpse puppets. And what Luo Ruiying killed as bait was just a ghost corpse puppet. His principle is that he will never expose himself to danger. If he can use ghost corpse puppets and miasma, he will never take risks himself. Luo Ruiying stuck the fairy sword in her hand upside down on the ground, and stood up with force. Her face turned dark green, but her eyes were still staring at the ghost husband resolutely. Master Fairy, stop struggling to your death and just surrender. I will make your death not so ugly. Maybe you can become my destiny ghost puppet. The ghost husband stared at Luo Ruiying's graceful figure and licked the corner of his mouth greedily. He is not greedy for Luo Ruiying's female beauty, but he is greedy for her body. Ordinary monks in the realm of heaven and earth who dared to use spiritual power so forcefully after being infected by his miasma would have died of festering disease long ago. However, Luo Ruiying has not shown any signs of decay until now. The strength of her immortal body is completely unmatched by others. The master in the upper realm said that Luo Ruiying could live or die, and maybe he could be rewarded with this fairy body. It is perfect for refining his natal ghost corpse puppet. Luo Ruiying turned her head slightly and looked at the woods behind her, with a trace of reluctance in her beautiful eyes, and then turned to the ghost husband resolutely. The golden and dazzling spiritual power sword, a black hair instantly turned into silvery white, and the red eyes floated with bright golden light. Lo God! Luo Ruiying gave a sweet shout, and a woman several feet tall and clad in golden fairy armor vaguely appeared behind her. The woman opened her golden eyes, raised the fairy sword high in her hand, and slashed down at the ghost husband with a seemingly random sword. The ghost husband felt an unprecedented sense of oppression from the female statue, and the slashing sword made him even more frightened. The dozens of feet of sword light fell like light, and there was no time to escape. The ghost husband had no choice but to quickly control all the ghost corpse puppets to block him, and the miasma all over his body turned into a barrier. Soon, the sword light devoured all the ghost corpse puppets and chopped them into pieces. The miasma barrier that the ghost husband guarded in front of him had almost no blocking effect and was also broken. Ah! A shrill scream came from the sword light. The sword light stretched for dozens of miles, and everything along the way was torn apart, leaving only the astonishing sword power and a deep sword gorge on the ground. After swinging the sword, Luo Ruiying could no longer hold on, and half knelt on the ground holding the sword. Forcing her to use the Luo Shen with her cultivation level in the heavenly realm consumed so much spiritual power that the miasma poison had already eroded into her body. I just felt a sharp pain in my body. But Luo Ruiying had a sad smile on her face. The child and he should be safe. It's just that she may not be able to find them. However, at this moment, a voice that made Luo Ruiying despair suddenly sounded. She truly deserves to be a daughter of the fairy world. I almost fell into trouble. The ghost husband slowly climbed out of the sword gully with his bloody body covered in sword wounds. The eyes that looked at Luo Ruiying were filled with only viciousness and resentment. If he hadn't deployed the immortal grade supreme treasure immortal silkworm sky armor in front of him in the miasma barrier in time, he would really have been killed by that sword. Even his immortal silkworm heavenly armor has been chopped into pieces by a sword. Sure enough, facing people from the immortal realm, even if her cultivation level has regressed and she is only in the heavenly realm, she must not be careless in the slightest. Luo Ruiying looked surprised when she saw that her ghost husband was not dead. He's not dead. What to do? In her current state, it was difficult for her to even move, let alone swing the second sword. However, the ghost husband's condition didn't seem to be any better than hers. Maybe there is still a chance to kill him. Otherwise, when he catches his breath, Ning Yechen and the child will be in danger. Just when Luo Ruiying was preparing for one last desperate attempt, something even more desperate happened to her. Two more figures flew over the sky. Su Sheng and Lu Jian looked down at the ghost husband on the ground, their expressions full of teasing and ridicule. Old ghost, didn't I say that I should send a signal first after discovering it? You don't want to take all the credit, do you? It seems that not only did he not enjoy the success, but he was also severely repaired. Faced with the cynicism of Su Sheng and Lu Jian, Wei Fu was extremely angry, but he was helpless. With his current injury, it is absolutely impossible to take down Luo Ruiying alone. I'm sure these two people will take advantage of his weakness to kill him. When Luo Ruiying saw Su Sheng and Lu Jian, she felt increasingly desperate. These two people are also with the ghost husband. Chapter 21. What to do? There was no way she could stop two god-level monks at their peak strength. Luo Ruiying was heartbroken. At this moment, the miasma had almost spread all over her body. She was suffering from severe pain in her internal organs, and she didn't even have the strength to lift the sword in her hand. Even if I want to delay it for a little longer, I can't do it. This must be Luo Ruiying, the daughter of the immortal realm named by the Lord in the upper realm. The fairy's appearance is indeed extraordinary. Where is her child? Su Sheng looked at Luo Ruiying with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Seeing her alone again, he couldn't help but frown slightly and ask the ghost husband. The mission given to them by the master in the upper world was to bring Luo Ruiying and Luo Hongye back. He specifically told Luo Hongye to take her back alive, which showed that her importance must be much higher than that of Luo Ruiying. Being asked like a question by Su Sheng, Wei Fu was very unhappy. He raised his hand and pointed to the woods behind Luo Ruiying and said impatiently. A mortal man took the baby girl and fled into the woods. Not only were you almost killed by a woman in the heavenly realm, but you also let your child escape in front of your eyes. The rumored corpse puppet ghost master seems to be overestimated. Lu Jian glanced at the ghost husband coldly and said with undisguised sarcasm. She was very dissatisfied with the ghost husband for letting the child run away. You, humph. The ghost husband was furious, but he could only snort and choose to endure it. Now that he was seriously injured, he would never dare to provoke Su Sheng and Lu Jian. Deal with this woman first, then hurry up and chase the child. The spiritual sword on Lu Jian's waist was unsheathed and slashed towards Luo Ruiying with a sword light that was several feet long. Luo Ruiying watched helplessly as the sword light came towards her, but she couldn't lift the fairy sword in her hand. She could only stare directly at death. Just when the sword light was about to touch her, a figure suddenly appeared silently in front of her. The man was wearing a black robe and his back was turned to her, so his appearance was completely unclear. The man in black robe just stretched out his finger and lightly touched the sword light, and the sword light disappeared in an instant. This scene surprised everyone present. A sword at the peak of the god realm was so easily resolved. Lu Jian frowned deeply. He is known as the #1 swordsman in the world. He has extremely high attainments in swordsmanship and is unmatched by anyone in the world. But someone took it down with one finger. The pride in his heart would never allow him to be so embarrassed in public. Heavenly Sword Blast Death. Lu Jian mobilized all his spiritual power, and his fierce momentum shot straight into the sky like an invisible sword. The spiritual sword in his hand thrust out a sword light that was dozens of feet high and surrounded by a strong wind. Ning Yechen still raised his finger, and the fingertips and nails lightly touched the sword light, and the sword light dissipated like a breeze. Everyone was deeply shocked again. Wu Fu and Su Sheng knew very well how terrifying Lu Jian's strength was, but they were completely unable to hurt the person in front of them. Lu Jian could no longer maintain his calm and arrogant expression, his face was full of shock. His powerful sword, which could open up mountains and open seas, was so easily resolved. "You, who are you?" Lu Jian asked in disbelief. Ning Yechen ignored him and turned to look at Luo Ruiying. He wears an evil ghost mask with dark fangs on his face, so there is no need to worry about being discovered. Seeing her dark green face, her face twitching slightly as she endured the severe pain of the miasma poison, I felt very distressed. "Really, if it doesn't work, you still have to show off your strength." Ning Yechen threw out a pill with gleaming spiritual power and flew into Luo Ruiying's hand, and said in an old and deep voice, "This elixir can remove the miasma in your body and help you recover from your injuries. Take it quickly." "Thank you, Senior." Luo Ruiying didn't hesitate and quickly took the pill. The powerful spiritual power nourishes the whole body, and all the miasma in the body is quickly eliminated, and the body no longer suffers from the severe pain like being eroded and burning. The medicine is incredibly powerful. Seeing that Luo Ruiying's complexion had recovered a lot and her body was fine, Ning Yechen breathed a sigh of relief and turned his eyes to the ghost husbands, with murderous intent clearly visible on his body. The terrifying murderous intention made everyone in the ghost husband tremble in their hearts, and their bodies were completely unable to move. This is a fear they have almost never felt before. There are still people in the world whose murderous intent can make people feel so terrifying. Who is he? The ghost husband and everyone couldn't help but have such a question in their minds. They have never heard of such a #1 person in the world. Ning Yechen stretched out his hand and pointed it at the ghost husband, twisting his palm slightly. The next second, the ghost husband's body and limbs began to twist and turn involuntarily, and there was a crackling sound of broken bones. The severe tearing pain made the ghost husband scream in agony. "Ah, Senior, please spare my life." PFF'd. Ning Yechen didn't stop at all, and in a moment he twisted the ghost husband into a twisted shape. His death was tragic. Together with his soul, he twisted and dissipated. This scene completely frightened Lu Jian and Su Sheng, and their eyes widened. The ghost husband who is as famous as them died like this. Ning Yechen turned his eyes to Lu Jian and Su Sheng, and they suddenly felt a chill of death wash over their bodies. "Senior, wait a moment. Why are you attacking us? Is there any offense to this junior?" Su Sheng quickly raised his hand and shouted. He felt very confident that even if he and Lu Jian joined forces, they would never be a match for the person in front of him. "The reason why I kill you is very simple. You have touched my reverse scale." Ning Yechen replied coldly. Ni Lin." Lu Jian and Su Sheng looked confused. What did they do? Why did it touch his reverse scale? This time, Ning Yechen was too lazy to answer them. He put his palms together and turned them into swords, waving them at Lu Jian. Lu Jian was shocked, and he quickly raised his sword in front of him. The invisible sword energy cut off the spiritual sword in his hand and passed straight through his body. How is this possible? Lu Jian maintained his sword-raising posture with an expression of disbelief. Then a thin line appeared on his neck, blood spurted out, and fell straight from the sky. A generation of swordsmen has passed away. Lu Jian's soul couldn't even escape from his body, and was split into two along with his body. At this time, Su Sheng's fear had reached the extreme. When he looked at Ning Yechen, he was so frightened that cold sweat broke out all over his body, and he quickly threw out an immortal talisman. The immortal talisman bloomed brightly, and Su Sheng's figure disappeared in an instant. When he appeared from the sky again, Su Sheng was already thousands of miles away. But he still didn't dare to stop at all, and continued to turn into a divine rainbow and fly towards the distance. His instinct told him that he must run away quickly. Otherwise you will die. You shouldn't have been bewitched by the people in the upper world and fantasized about ascending to the fairy world in the first place. Now not only is the dream shattered, but the life that has been spent for hundreds of years is not guaranteed. He felt extremely regretful, and there was only one thought left in his mind. Get away from here quickly. For this reason, he did not hesitate to use his most life-saving 1,000 miles divine escape immortal talisman. Ning Yechen looked at Su Sheng who was escaping, and did not rush after him. Instead, he turned around and walked in front of Luo Ruiying, reaching out and pressing her forehead. After making sure she was fine, she felt relieved. Luo Ruiying was startled by such an intimate gesture. She quickly took a step back to distance herself, cupped her hands and thanked her. Thank you, Senior, for coming to the rescue. Seeing the man in black robe kill Gui Fu and Lu Jian with his overwhelming strength, Luo Ruiying knew that this man was definitely not a monk from the human world. From those words about touching Ni Lin, she had already guessed the identity of this person. This person is definitely the senior who established the immortal medicine garden in this mountain forest. The reverse scale in his mouth is the fairy medicine garden he established. Guifu's miasma poison and Lu Jian's sword energy almost destroyed the fairy medicine garden, so the senior suddenly appeared and killed them in anger. Luo Ruiying guessed in her heart. Ning Yechen didn't know what Luo Ruiying was thinking. When she saw her take a step back, she thought he had scared her just now, so she said softly and gently. The miasma poison in your body has been eliminated, and the injury only needs a few days to recover. Thank you, Senior. Luo Ruiying bowed slightly and expressed gratitude. This senior was ruthless in his attacks, but he was actually a gentle and kind-hearted person. While the senior was still there, Luo Ruiying hesitated for a moment and took the initiative to speak frankly. Senior, I have something to tell you truthfully. Huh, what's the matter? Ning Yechen asked curiously. Luo Ruiying said with a guilty look on her face. Senior, my husband and I accidentally discovered your elixir garden and picked a lot of elixirs and elixirs from it. I also picked the 7-color glazed flower. If possible, I would like to exchange some fairy treasures with you as an apology. If the senior wants to punish and blame, the junior should accept it, but please don't blame my husband. He is just a human being, no offense intended. After saying that, Luo Ruiying felt extremely uneasy and secretly looked at the actions of the black-robed senior. She was very worried that after learning that the fairy medicine garden was picked at will, and that she had taken away the 7-color glazed flowers, would he kill them in anger? After all, immortal medicine garden is the reverse scale of this senior. To be honest, even if she took out the few remaining fairy treasures on her body, it would not be able to make up for the value of that 7-color glazed flower. While Luo Ruiying waited nervously, Ning Yechen chuckled and waved his hand casually. It doesn't matter, as long as you like it, you can pick those jelly herbs and elixirs for you. Those so-called immortal treasures of yours are of no use to me, so just keep them. Luo Ruiying seemed to regard him as a senior who planted the fairy medicine garden. But this is good, as it saves him from making up any other reasons. And she was still caring about him, favoring him, and wanting to bear the punishment alone, which moved him very much. Luo Ruiying was stunned when she heard that she could pick as she pleased without any exchange. Many of those are valuable immortal grass elixirs. Just allow her to pick as she pleases. Even when she picked off the glazed 7-color flower, it didn't matter at all, and she didn't mean to get angry or blame her at all. There was not even a little bit of surprise, as if she had already known that the 7-color flower had been picked by her. This senior is pretty good. Dare you ask me your senior's name? If there is an opportunity in the future, I will definitely come to thank you. Luo Ruiying bowed again and expressed solemn gratitude. However, when she raised her head, there was still half a figure in front of her. The senior disappeared as quietly as when he came. Maybe it's a hidden master who doesn't want people to know his name. Luo Ruiying didn't pay too much attention. After settling down, she couldn't help but feel grateful that she survived. Although she had long been prepared to sacrifice, when Lu Jian's sword energy almost killed her, she still felt unwilling to give up. The figure of the man and the child appeared in my mind involuntarily. She really still didn't want to leave them like this. Correct. We have to find them quickly. Otherwise, it would be dangerous if you encounter other monsters in the woods. Luo Ruiying thought of Ning Yechen and Luo Hongye who had escaped, and felt anxious again, so she hurried towards the woods. The other side. After leaving Luo Ruiying, Ning Yechen appeared outside a cave and coldly said, "Get out of here." The next second, there was a startling sound in the cave, 3 figures quickly flashed out, and a kneeling shovel arrived in front of Ning Yechen. Sir. You are looking for us?" The sky-swallowing divine python asked with trepidation as cold water flowed from its forehead. How long had it passed before they were called out by Ning Yechen twice in a row? It almost scared them to death. I was having a lot of fun playing cards, but when I heard this sound, I was scared out of my mind. Looking at Ning Yechen's cold and frosty face, everyone fell silent. I don't know who the ignorant person is that offended this gentleman. Ning Yechen looked at the crowd and said calmly, "What were you doing just now?" "My lord, here we are, playing cards." The chaos demonic cow replied weakly. "It's just a game of cards, so we won't come here to ask questions." Play cards. Someone entered the demon realm forest and disturbed my purity, but you are playing cards here. You really don't know why I kept you, do you? Ning Yechen frowned slightly and said unkindly. These words made everyone present shudder, and they quickly kowtowed and explained. "My lord, you misunderstood. We thought those people were also yours, sir." Everyone in the chaos demonic cow wanted to cry, but they felt so aggrieved that they wanted to cry. The black scale dragon died because he attacked people who could not take action at random. The 3 of them learned their lesson and hid in the cave honestly. However, they let people in and were held accountable. When Ning Yechen saw everyone crying and feeling aggrieved, he had no intention of holding them accountable. Instead, he pointed in the direction where Su Sheng had escaped, and said with a cold voice, "There is a person escaping from this direction. Do you know what to do? Understand. Let's go kill him now. For disturbing your lord, let him die 10,000 times." The chaos demonic bull immediately slapped his chest and sternly promised. Others nodded in agreement. Ning Yechen rolled his eyes at everyone and said calmly, "I want to live. If he dies, you don't have to come back alive, understand?" "Understand." Everyone nodded obediently. "Then why are you still kneeling here? If you let him run away, you don't have to come back. Just wait for me to find you." Ning Yechen looked at the 3 people sitting there obediently, frowned and said coldly. If he hadn't been anxious to get back to his wife and daughter, he wouldn't have given the task of arresting people to the 3 of them. The 3 chaos demonic cows woke up and quickly got up from the ground. Because he was too frightened, his legs and feet were not in control. When he stood up, his legs and feet were shaking and he almost fell. Ning Yechen frowned at this. Is it really okay to leave it to these 3 demons? How about just releasing his apostles? Under Ning Yechen's questioning gaze, the 3 chaos demonic cows quickly turned into divine rainbows and flew towards the distance and disappeared. This was a matter of life for the 3 of them, and all 3 of them tried their best to catch up. Ning Yechen watched everyone go away, then turned to look at the other side of the woods. It's time for him to return to his precious daughter and wife as soon as possible. Otherwise it would be terrible if we were discovered. Yechen, yay. After the danger was resolved, Luo Ruiying rushed into the woods to look for Ning Yechen and Luo Hongye. While anxiously walking through the woods, he shouted loudly. After a while, there was a rustling sound in the woods ahead. Ning Yechen walked out of the woods with Luo Hongye in his arms. Seeing that Ning Yechen and Luo Hongye were in peace, Luo Ruiying breathed a sigh of relief and finally let go of her nervousness. Lady, mother. Luo Hongye saw Luo Ruiying's tears bursting out of her eyes again, and she stretched out her tender arms to hug her. When Ning Yechen walked in front of Luo Ruiying stretched out her hands to take Luo Hongye, hugged her tightly, gently stroked her back, and coaxed softly. Mom is here, be good every night and don't cry. Luo Ruiying was extremely happy to be able to see her child and him again, her eyes were slightly moist, and she almost cried with joy. Ning Yechen stood aside and watched the scene in front of him, with a smile on his face, and opened his arms to Luo Ruiying, as if waiting for her to take the initiative to embrace him. Luo Ruiying raised her eyes and glared at Ning Yechen with a hint of reproach, and asked. I asked you to take the child away, why did you come back with the child? What if something happens? She thought it was a touching reunion, and she should have been eager to embrace him, but in the end, she was scolded. She obviously looks very happy. Ning Yechen froze on the spot with his arms open in embarrassment. He couldn't explain that he knew it was all over a long time ago, so he had to admit his mistake. It's because of my husband that it's not right. But if you want to abandon you for your husband and children, how can you do this? Well, don't leave your mother every night. Luo Hongye also said firmly at this time with a milky voice. Luo Ruiying's heart trembled slightly and she was greatly moved, but she still glared at Ning Yechen angrily. She knew that Ning Yechen and Luo Hongye were worried about her, so they came back to find her. She was reluctant to leave them. But she must not put them in danger. If there is a next time, she will still let them leave and buy time for them herself. Fortunately, a senior expert took action this time, otherwise the consequences would be disastrous if Ning Yechen came back with the child. The time she sacrificed herself to buy them was almost in vain. That's why she felt a little angry. Don't do this next time. Too dangerous. I'll forgive you this time. Yes, I understand, ma'am. So, madam, don't you plan to give your husband a reunion hug? Ning Yechen nodded perfunctorily and continued to open his arms to Luo Ruiying with a smile. Luo Ruiying pursed her lips in dissatisfaction with Ning Yechen's perfunctory tone, hesitated for a moment, stepped forward, hugged Luo Hongye and pressed her into his arms. Seeing how he looked forward to it, finally meeting again, it was just a hug, just let him. Ning Yechen wrapped his hands around Luo Ruiying's waist, pressing her closer to him. Luo Ruiying pressed her cheek against Ning Yechen's chest, a hint of blush appeared on her face, but she didn't express anything, so she acquiesced to his behavior. It was the first time she was held in someone's arms like this, and she unexpectedly felt very warm and secure in his arms. Unconsciously, Luo Ruiying quietly closed her eyes. She was so exhausted that she fell asleep. But she still held Luo Hongye tightly in her arms. Luo Hongye didn't know when she snuggled into Luo Ruiying's arms and fell asleep peacefully. Looking at the sleeping mother and daughter, Ning Yechen smiled fondly, and reached out her hand to gently caress Luo Ruiying's cheek with some distress. If you don't have enough strength, you still have to show off your strength. Forcibly overdrafting spiritual power and using magic that cannot be performed in one's own realm may damage one's foundation. If he is not careful, his remaining cultivation level will be lost. Fortunately, he is here. Ning Yechen channeled his spiritual power to protect Luo Ruiying's body meridians, carried her back to the house, and gently placed the mother and daughter on the bed and covered them with quilts. And he was sitting beside the bed guarding them. Until then, a message came. Sir, we have captured the person you want. After receiving the news, Ning Yechen's expression turned cold. After looking at the sleeping mother and daughter, he disappeared from the house again. In a cave somewhere in the demonic forest. In the dark cave, painful muffled sounds came from the depths of the cave. Su Sheng was tied tightly to a stone pillar, with a wooden stick stuffed in his mouth, and endured a violent beating. At this moment, he no longer had the elegant scholarly demeanor of the past. Instead, he had a bruised nose and swollen face, ragged clothes, bruises all over his body, and was in an extremely miserable state. Say quickly, who ordered you to come here? Say it or not. Say it or not. The chaos demonic bull stood in front of Su Sheng, hitting Su Sheng hard with its iron fist as big as a sandbag, and kept asking questions. You're so tough. I've been punched dozens of times, but I'm still refusing to speak. Get out of the way and let me come. The Titan giant ape rolled up his sleeves and took over the position of the chaos demonic bull. The giant ape's transformed fist hit Su Sheng's body hard. With each punch, the stone pillar behind Su Sheng shook, and the entire cave shook. Let you have a tough mouth. Let you have a tough mouth. You haven't said it yet, right? I want you not to say it. After a few punches from the Titan ape, Su Sheng was already vomiting blood, with tears in his eyes, and he was making moaning sounds with all his strength. As one of the most powerful people in the world, at this time, he was crying in pain and grievance. After using the 1,000 miles divine escape talisman to escape, he thought he had escaped safely, but he didn't expect these 3 demon kings to chase him like crazy. He was eventually overtaken and had no choice but to fight, but was unfortunately defeated and captured. Then they gagged him and took him to the cave. Without saying a word, he was brutally tortured to extract a confession. He wanted to beg for mercy, tell them everything he knew, and beg them to let them go, but his mouth was blocked. I can't speak at all. But these 2 demon kings only focused on beating him continuously, and they didn't seem to realize that he couldn't speak at all. He really couldn't express his suffering. The sky-swallowing divine python standing aside watched silently, looking at the chaos demonic bull and the titan giant ape as if they were idiots. Did these 2 idiots really not realize that their mouths were gagged, or did they do it on purpose? Although the heaven-swallowing divine python discovered it, it had no intention of reminding him. If you want to say why, it is to vent your anger. It was because of the arrival of these guys that they almost had to be blamed by that adult again and almost lost their lives. Not even one more beating would be enough to make them feel so bad. It's my turn, it's my turn. After the titan giant ape punched Su Sheng a few times, the chaos demon bull was eager to try again. The interrogation turned into a game where the 2 of them could get Su Sheng to speak first. Su Sheng might die if he continued to fight, so the heaven-swallowing divine python quickly stopped him. That's enough. If you keep fighting, he will die. If we beat someone to death, that adult will not spare us. I have sent a message to inform you, sir. I estimate that the Lord will arrive soon. We will decide how to deal with him after the Lord arrives. The chaos demon bull and the titan giant ape trembled in fright when they heard this, and then stopped in anger. Instead, they became concerned about Su Sheng's injuries. They were really afraid that if he died accidentally, they would be doomed. The chaos demonic bull grabbed Su Sheng's collar, stared at the 2 big copper bells, and threatened sternly. I tell you, you are not allowed to die now, or I will kill you. Did you hear that? As he said that, the chaos demon bull slapped Su Sheng's face with 2 more big dicks, waking him up from the dying state. Su Sheng's face was red and swollen beyond recognition, and he nodded with tears in his eyes. He couldn't help but start to guess who the adult mentioned by the 3 demon kings could be. These 3 demon kings are all at the same peak as him in the realm of gods. Each of them is no less powerful than him and can be considered one of the top powers in the world. He has long heard that there are several demon kings in the demon forest who are terrifyingly powerful. But I didn't expect that they would obey others obediently. Who can control these powerful demon kings? And why did you attack him for no reason? Su Sheng's first thought was of the mysterious black-robed old man who killed Gui Fu and Lu Jian with one blow, and his heart trembled with fear. If it was the mysterious man, then everything would be explained. Only he can make these 3 demon kings bow down obediently. At this moment, Ning Yechen slowly walked into the cave with his hands behind his back. At this time, he no longer deliberately concealed his identity, but appeared in front of everyone with his original appearance. When everyone in the chaos demonic cow saw Ning Yechen arriving, they quickly knelt down obediently and kowtowed. Meet the adults. Su Sheng looked straight at Ning Yechen with an expression of curiosity and fear. The man in front of him looked like he was only in his early 20s, and he was extremely handsome, but he couldn't feel the slightest bit of cultivation from him. But he also exudes that cold, arrogant and contemptuous temperament. If he hadn't been tied to the pillar, he would have almost knelt down. Ning Yechen looked at the dying Su Sheng, frowned, and asked the Chaos Demon Bull and others. Why does he look like he's about to die? Did you lynch him? No, my lord, when we caught this guy, he resisted with all his strength. If we were not careful, we would use more force. I definitely never punched him. The Chaos Demonic Bull assured in a trembling voice, without blushing or out of breath. The sky-swallowing divine python and the titan giant ape couldn't help but glanced at the Chaos Demonic Bull in surprise. What this guy said is true. Looking at Su Sheng who was still breathing, Ning Yechen didn't pursue the matter any further. He strode up to him, stared at him with cold eyes, took off the wooden stick from his mouth, and asked. Tell me, who are you and who asked you to come? Senior, this junior is called Su Sheng, and he is the current master of the Confucian Palace. I broke into this place unintentionally and will undoubtedly offend you, sir. I hope you can let me go. I will make amends to you with a generous gift someday. I'm asking you who asked you to come, don't you understand? Ning Yechen's eyes turned cold, and he grabbed one of Su Sheng's arms and squeezed it gently. The whole arm instantly collapsed. Ah! After losing an arm, Su Sheng let out a miserable wail in pain, and blood spurted out. The 3 chaos demonic cows kneeling aside couldn't help but tremble, and obediently lowered their heads. Compared to adults, their attacks are much lighter. I ask again, who asked you to come? Ning Yechen asked again in a cold voice. Yes, it's a certain adult from the upper world. He has hidden his identity, I have never seen him. Just listen to what he said and help him bring him the mother and daughter named Luo Ruiying and Luo Hongye, and he will help us ascend to the fairy world. That's all I know. Senior, please forgive me this time. Su Sheng endured the severe pain and shouted with a pale face. He understood that the person in front of him was definitely not a good person, and this time he did not dare to hesitate at all. How do you contact that person? Ning Yechen asked coldly. We couldn't contact that person came to us. Su Sheng replied weakly. Ning Yechen frowned in displeasure. I still want to catch that person directly. Sure enough, it's not that easy. Tell me about your origins. Ning Yechen asked about the identities of Su Sheng and the other 3 people he killed. Only then did Su Sheng realize that Wu Kuang had died in Ning Yechen's hands a long time ago, and he didn't dare to reveal anything. He, Su Sheng, is the master of the Confucian Palace in the world. Lu Jian, the leader of the Qingfeng sword sect. Wu Kuang, the master of the martial arts temple. The ghost husband is the master of the human puppet ghost cave. The sects that the 4 of them belong to are all the top first-class sects in the world today, alongside the 4 major sects in the world. 3 days ago, all 4 of them met a mysterious man who came to visit them. The other party asked them to work together to bring Luo Ruiying and Luo Hongye back. As long as they can do it, the other party will help them ascend to the fairy world. After that, they can be introduced to join a first-class sect in the fairy world. Faced with such a temptation, and hearing that they were only trying to catch a fairy girl in the celestial realm, everyone readily accepted it. Then they followed the ghost husband's tracking and came to the demon realm forest, and what happened next? Senior, I have told you everything I know. Please let me go, I will be at your disposal. Su Sheng pleaded with fear. Ning Yechen smiled softly, and the shadows under his feet spread to Su Sheng's feet. A large group of dark golden insects emerged from the shadows and climbed onto his body. What is this? Stop. Senior, please stop. Su Sheng felt like his whole body was being bitten continuously. Countless bugs had penetrated into his body, and the little bits and pieces of them gnawed all over his body. The heart-wrenching pain and fear made him cry out and beg for mercy. After a while, Su Sheng was completely overwhelmed by the insects. The wailing sound quickly disappeared and his body no longer struggled. After the insects faded away from the stone pillar, there was nothing left on the stone pillar. Ning Yechen had no intention of letting any of them go when he attacked his wife and children from the very beginning. Even the sect they belonged to. After eating Su Sheng, the insects swarmed like a tide towards the 3 chaos demonic cows who were kneeling aside and shivering. Sir, your little thing is crawling over. The 3 chaos demonic cows hugged each other and shouted in fear. They may not be able to stop these bugs alone. Ning Yechen waved, and the insects that were about to touch the chaos demonic cow immediately turned around and returned to Ning Yechen's feet, and got into his shadow again. These bugs are the soul-eating bugs of the demon world. They can eat anything, but their favorite things are those with spiritual power. As long as it contains spiritual power, they will eat it up. The most terrifying thing is that these soul-eating insects only have the strength of the psychic realm when they first hatch, but they can improve their cultivation through continuous feeding. Ning Yechen's batch of soul-devouring insects have even eaten the immortal remains of many immortal emperors, and now the cultivation level of each one is higher than that of the chaos demonic cows. If he hadn't taken action to recall them, the 3 chaos demonic cows would have been eaten up by the ghouls in just a moment. Seeing that all the insects were recalled, everyone in the chaos demonic cow breathed a sigh of relief. I almost thought that the adults would take the opportunity to deal with them together. Ning Yechen deliberately let the soul-eating insects get close to the chaos demonic cows, just to scare them and make them more obedient. I have something for you. Ning Yechen walked up to the chaos demonic cows, looked down at them and said calmly. If you have anything, sir, please feel free to ask me. I am willing to serve you. The heaven-swallowing divine python took the lead and said in a solemn voice. The chaos demonic bull and the titan giant ape also kowtowed in agreement. Ning Yechen was very satisfied with the obedient performance of the three of them. He raised his palms and pointed them at them. The dark spiritual power emitted from his hands wrapped around their bodies and lifted them up in the air. Yes, sir, the sky-swallowing divine python asked in confusion. The next second, a majestic and vast spiritual power suddenly poured into their bodies, leaving them without any defense. Terrifying spiritual power was constantly being injected into their meridians, filling the spiritual sea, and the realm bottlenecks that had stayed for more than 100 years were being squeezed away bit by bit at this moment. Oh, sir, it's full, No more injection. I can't stand it anymore. Spiritual power poured into the meridians crazily, and the meridians throughout the body were expanded by the spiritual power, and there was a feeling that they were about to burst. At this moment, the spirits of the heaven-swallowing divine python and others are both in pain and filled with the pleasure injected by spiritual power. It can be said that they are in pain and happiness at the same time. If you want to break through, just bear with me. Ning Yechen couldn't help but frown as he listened to the sweet cry of the heaven-swallowing python. Why does it sound weird? When the heaven-swallowing divine python and others heard this, they gritted their teeth and endured it. This is a once-in-a-millennium opportunity. The Lord is using spiritual power to help them break through the realm of gods and enter the realm of immortals. Accompanied by 3 roars of catharsis, the spiritual power of the heaven-swallowing divine python soared to the sky, a huge aura bloomed from within, and their bodies exuded gleaming spiritual light like stardust. This means that they have successfully broken through to the immortal realm. If Ning Yechen hadn't used a barrier to protect the cave and cut off all the rules of the world, the 3 of them would have broken through the immortals, which would have definitely caused a huge immortal thunder disaster. He is not afraid of trouble from the immortal thunder tribulation, but too much movement will attract the attention of Luo Ruiying and other people in the world. The most important thing is that his wife and children are sleeping. What if thunder wakes them up? After successfully breaking through the immortal realm, everyone in the sky-swallowing divine python was immersed in the baptism of spiritual power, and their faces couldn't help but show a look of comfort. After landing again, the chaos demon bull opened his eyes, a flash of light flashed in his eyes, and he felt that his whole body was filled with majestic power. At this moment, he felt that he was invincible in the world. Until Ning Yechen's voice sounded from around them again. Do you feel invincible? Yes, the chaos demonic cow subconsciously replied. After coming back to his senses, his face instantly turned pale with fright, and he quickly shook his head like a rattle. No. How can I compare to you, sir? Even after breaking through to the immortal realm, he felt that he would never survive for half a second in Ning Yechen's hands. We are able to achieve what we have today, thanks to the opportunity you generously gave us. The heaven-swallowing divine python and the titan giant ape also hurriedly agreed. I was very surprised. I never expected that I would get such a great opportunity in the hands of this adult. If they were allowed to break through on their own, I don't know how long it would take to successfully break through. But this adult used his spiritual power forcefully and helped them break through in just a moment. The strength of the adults is far beyond their imagination. Everyone was both afraid and full of respect for Ning Yechen. Ning Yechen waved his hand, and 3 immortal weapons were inserted into the 3 chaos demonic cows. A red battle axe, a pair of gloves as bright as gems, and a snake sword curved like a snake. Sir, this. The 3 chaos demonic cows looked at the immortal weapon in front of them, their eyes wide open, and they almost had the word, want, written on their faces. This is a rare fairy weapon in the world. Looking at the bright fairy light emitting from the fairy weapon, it must be a fairy weapon of a high grade. They have been traveling through the demon forest for hundreds of years, but they have never seen an immortal weapon before. Ning Yechen looked at everyone and said calmly, the thing I want to leave to you is that during my absence, you are responsible for the safety of my wife and children. Your cultivation strength is too poor, so I will help you break through the immortal realm, and I will give you these 3 immortal weapons as a gift. Ning Yechen helped the Chaos Demonic Cows break through, and gave them immortal weapons to enhance their strength. He also considered the three of them as his younger thugs. They can also take action when necessary. If the strength is too low, it will be useless. But even if he helped them break through to the immortal realm, their strength was still far behind his former subordinates. Everyone in the Chaos Demonic Cow looked in disbelief. Sir, did you give the immortal weapon to them so easily? After the shock, everyone was overjoyed and hurriedly kowtowed and pledged their allegiance. Thank you, sir, for the gift. We are willing to die for you, and we will protect the madam and the little princess to the death. The Chaos Demonic Bull straightened his body, clenched his fists and beat his chest, and said solemnly, From now on, sir, your wife and children will be my wife and children. Ning Yechen felt that this sentence was not quite right, so he narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at the Chaos Demonic Cow. Chaos Demon Bull also felt that he had said something wrong, and quickly explained. No, what I mean is that I will regard your wife and children as my own. It doesn't seem right. Ning Yechen silently walked up to the Chaos Demonic Cow with a smile on his face. Then there was a bang, and a punch hit his head, driving half of his body upside down into the ground. Although he knew that the stupid cow probably didn't mean to say that, he still couldn't help but stepped forward and punched him. The sky-swallowing divine python and the titan giant ape couldn't bear to glance at the Chaos Demonic ox that was stuck upside down on the ground and passed out unconscious. Sure enough, even if you have entered the immortal realm, you are still so vulnerable in front of adults. Western region, human puppet ghost cave. On a cliff, a palace made entirely of various limbs and looking like a ferocious ghost skeleton stood on the cliff. Surrounding the cliffs are countless caves, each of which is the cave of a human puppet ghost cave monk. Densely packed caves cover the entire cliff, and many monks leap back and forth between the cliff caves. Under the silent night sky, the bright moon hung high and dark clouds covered the sky. Ning Yechen's figure quietly came to the sky above the human puppet ghost cave, overlooking the top sect built on the cliff, and whispered softly. Let's start from here. He is very principled in what he does. As long as he takes action against his people, he will never show mercy. Since he hurt his wife and tried to be unfaithful to his child, then the 4 major sects in this world can disappear from the world. Although it could be handed over to the Chaos Demon Bull and the 3 of them, which would be enough to defeat the 4 major sects, the efficiency would inevitably be too low. So Ning Yechen decided to do it himself and solve it simply and quickly. He still has to rush to the next set. Ning Yechen raised his arm high, and a small flame instantly shot up in his palm. The small flames continued to expand, and in the blink of an eye, a huge fireball with a diameter of about tens of feet appeared in his hand. The fireball was as hot as the sun, the surrounding void was distorted, and the flames flowed on the surface of the fireball like fire dragons. The dazzling light illuminated the entire night sky. The temperature around the human puppet ghost cave suddenly rose rapidly. All the monks in the human puppet ghost cave noticed something strange and walked out of the cave one after another, looking up at the night sky in astonishment. What's going on? It's daybreak. I remember I just squinted my eyes. Why is the sun so close today? No, look, that's a person. Then, that's someone using magic. Everyone in the human puppet ghost cave discovered Ning Yechen's figure, and their faces turned pale with fear. Someone can actually defeat such a terrifying and powerful magic. If the fireball in his hand were to hit, the entire ghost cave would be wiped out. Several figures immediately jumped out of the ghost cave hall and hurriedly came to Ning Yechen. May I ask who the senior is? Why did you visit my puppet ghost cave late at night? Senior, if you have something to say, can you put away your immortal magic first? Several elders from the human puppet ghost cave stepped forward together and spoke politely to Ning Yechen. Only when they got closer did they realize how terrifying the fireball in Ning Yechen's hands was. The hot pressure almost made them breathless, their whole bodies were soaked with sweat, and even their skin began to burn and melt. The most terrifying thing is that this fireball continues to expand. Senior, I wonder where in my human puppet ghost cave I could offend Senior. I also hope that Senior Haihan will definitely apologize to Senior in person when my ancestor returns. The great elder of Ren Puppet Ghost Cave, Guizi, raised his hands and said respectfully. What I was thinking was that even if I postpone it, I must postpone it until the ancestor returns. Otherwise, this fireball is enough to destroy the entire human puppet ghost cave. Ning Yechen glanced at everyone with cold eyes and disdained to let them understand, and said calmly, "Your ancestor will not come back. And you, the puppet ghost cave, will disappear from the world from today on." Wah, what? When everyone in Guihe heard this, they were shocked. Their ancestor ghost husband has been killed. And the person in front of me is really planning to destroy their entire puppet ghost cave in one fell swoop. Do it. Stop him. Guizi shouted loudly. Several elders simultaneously used their natal magic weapons to attack Ning Yechen. Ning Yechen looked at it dismissively, holding the fireball high with one hand and holding it behind him with the other. His posture remained motionless as several fire dragons suddenly sprang out from the fireball and attacked everyone. Everyone was swallowed up by the fire dragon, including their life treasures, in an instant, leaving them powerless to resist. With several screams one after another, several elders from the top sects were all turned into ashes. The disciples under the human puppet ghost cave were stunned, and for a moment they couldn't believe what was happening in front of them. They belong to one of the top sects in the world. Each elder has the cultivation level of a god, but they were killed without any resistance. The people who were the first to react immediately ran away in panic. Ning Yechen gently dropped the fireball in his hand. The huge fireball instantly covered the entire ghost cave, leaving him with nowhere to escape. Before the fireball completely hit, the fiery and terrifying heat wave had already reduced countless people to ashes. Boom! When the fireball completely hit, the human puppet ghost cave melted instantly, along with everything within 100 feet radius. There is only a huge abyss pit left on the ground. The heat is rising in the giant pit, and the scorching residual power is enough to make all surrounding creatures afraid to come even close. At this point, the human puppet ghost cave disappeared from the world. At the same time, Dongzhou Tianxia Confucian Palace was razed to the ground by 10,000 immortal thunders. The Qingfeng sword sect in Zhongzhou was annihilated by a sword, and only a sword gully stretching for hundreds of feet was left at the site of the sword sect. The Nanzhou martial arts temple was no exception. It was completely suppressed by a majestic and boundless mountain. The entire martial arts temple was completely replaced by a majestic mountain. Overnight, all 4 major sects in the world were destroyed. 3 soul incarnations flew back to Ning Yechen from various places and merged into his body again. At this moment, dozens of immortal thunders struck Ning Yechen's body without warning under the night sky. Every immortal thunder has the power of heaven to tear the void apart. This is the restraint and punishment of the rules of the human world, and it can also be said to be the check and balance of heaven. In the human world, the cultivation strength can only reach the peak of the immortal realm at most. Even if other people from the 6 realms enter the human world, they have to actively suppress their cultivation. Once the cultivation strength exceeds the peak of the immortal realm, heaven will rain down the immortal thunder to kill it. The methods used by Ning Yechen far exceeded the peak strength of the immortal realm. After being sensed by heavenly Tao, he was obliterated. But there is an absolute premise for this, that is, the divine power of heaven is above that person. If that person's cultivation strength is not afraid of the divine power of heaven, then the checks and balances of these rules will have no effect on him. For example, for Ning Yechen, facing dozens of immortal thunders falling, Ning Yechen had long been accustomed to it. Almost every time after he moved his hands, Tiandao had to massage him twice. It was a routine. Ning Yechen's body was wrapped in a dark spiritual shield. Dozens of immortal lightning struck the shield, but it did not even break the shield. It wasn't until the immortal thunder was struck that Ning Yechen put away the shield leisurely. Perhaps it was due to the fact that he transformed into a divine soul clone and cast 4 immortal spells at the same time. He could feel that the immortal thunder this time was much more powerful than before. But it's still a bit disappointing. After solving the 4 major sects, Ning Yechen looked up to the sky, and once again turned into a divine rainbow and rushed into the sky. It's almost time, it's time to go back to the fairy world again. Immortal World, Tiandao Imperial Palace. Ever since Ning Yechen destroyed half of the Tiandao Emperor's palace with a casual slap, the disciples of the Tiandao Emperor's palace have been busy rebuilding the Tiandao Emperor's palace these days, in addition to collecting intelligence all over the immortal domain. It is rumored that Demon Lord Yi Mochen will come to the Tiandao Emperor's palace in the near future, and people in the Tiandao Emperor's palace are in a state of panic. Ning Yechen slowly fell from the sky and walked swaggering towards the main hall of the Tiandao Emperor's palace, as skillfully and freely as if he were returning to his own home. Following the last experience, the surrounding disciples of the Tiandao Imperial Palace recognized Ning Yechen at a glance. Everyone's expressions suddenly changed and they hid away in fear. When the guard responsible for guarding the outside of the main hall saw Ning Yechen walking up the jade steps, he was so frightened that he crawled into the main hall and shouted, "Old ancestor, the demon lord is here again." Swish, swish, swish. Tiandao Wenchen and a group of elders quickly flew out and stood at the door to greet them. "Welcome the demon lord. Stop talking nonsense and just tell us the results." Ning Yechen didn't want to waste any extra time, so he walked straight into the main hall and sat down, then picked up the fruits and food on the table next to him. Ever since he wanted to hide his identity in Luo Ruiying, he has never eaten fairy fruit or anything else. While he was out in the fairy world and his wife was not with him, he had to take the opportunity to eat more. He would not be able to eat when he got back. Everyone in Tiandao Wenchen also wanted to send this murderer away quickly, so they quickly walked to the side and bowed to report on the investigation of the past few days. "Demon Lord, the woman you were looking for, Luo Ruiying, and the forces behind her, we and other forces in the immortal realm have carefully investigated the entire immortal realm. Luo Ruiying is the daughter of a force called Luo Temple in the northern Ming dynasty, but there is no news about her in the fairy world. She left the Luo Temple more than 100 years ago and her whereabouts are unknown. There is no news about her even in the Luo Temple." After Tiandao Wenchen finished speaking, he secretly carefully observed the changes in Ning Yechen's expression, for fear that he would be dissatisfied with the results of the investigation. But they have searched almost the entire fairy world, and they can only get this little useful information. When Ning Yechen heard this, he put his face with one hand, looking thoughtful, and tapped the handrail gently with his fingers. He was indeed not very satisfied with the results of the investigation, but he did not embarrass Tiandao Wenchen and the others. He knew that they must have tried their best to investigate, and they could only find this little information, which meant that this was all they had. At least knowing the forces behind it is somewhat useful information. "Okay, thank you for your hard work." Ning Yechen stood up, pocketed all the fairy fruits on the table, and walked out of the main hall. He turned his back to Tiandao Wenchen and others and waved goodbye. When Tiandao Wenchen and others saw that Ning Yechen was about to leave, they thought that they had finally sent this murderer away. Their faces were so happy that they said cheerfully, "I am very happy to be able to share the worries of the Demon Lord. Yeah, it's rare that I have the intention. I will come to you next time if something happens." Ning Yechen was happy when he heard this, turned around and said to Tiandao Wenchen with a smile. He naturally knew that this was just a pretentious statement made by Tiandao Wenchen. The other party wished in his heart that he would not come again. The more this happens, the more he should look for opportunities to come again. When Tiandao Wenchen heard this, his face twitched slightly, and he felt as if he had eaten a fly. He wanted to slap himself twice. He has such a mouth, why would he say that when he has nothing to do? Being targeted by the Demon Lord would be really fatal. All the elders behind Tiandao Wenchen also looked sad, and it was difficult to blame their ancestors. "Ancestor, why do you want to say that more?" He took it seriously. Biming Immortal Realm, Luo Temple. The palaces of Luotian Temple are arranged around it, and the buildings are arranged in rows. In the center of the temple stands a stone statue of a 100-foot-tall goddess. The female stone statue is wearing armor and holding a sword, with her head held high and her chest pointed straight ahead. She has a heroic appearance and a rainbow of momentum, giving her the air of a heroine. At this time, the Luo Temple was full of panic and everyone was in danger. Many people had even escaped from the Luo Temple. Just because in the past few days, there have been rumors in the fairy world that the Supreme Lord of the Demon Realm, Yi Mochen, has returned to the fairy world, and he is also looking for a woman named Luo Ruiying by name. And that Luo Ruiying was from their Luo Temple. Everyone thought that Luo Ruiying had offended the Demon Lord, and that the Demon Lord came here specifically to seek revenge. They were so frightened that they fled in all directions, unable to sleep or eat well. Little did they know that the person they were most worried about had already arrived. After leaving the Tiandao Imperial Palace, Ning Yechen quickly arrived above the Luo Temple. The size of the Luo Temple is completely incomparable to that of the Tiandao Imperial Palace, and even a third-rate immortal sect can only be ranked in the immortal world. It is really rare for such a small sect to have an immortal emperor like Luo Ruiying appear. It's a pity that I don't know how to cherish it. What should I do? Just destroy it. Ning Yechen looked down at the Luo Temple, looking a little embarrassed for a moment. It's easy to destroy it directly, which is just a slap in the face. The problem is that this is his wife's natal family after all. If he really destroyed it directly, wouldn't he destroy his wife's entire family? Not very suitable. After much thought, Ning Yechen decided to test it out before making a decision. In an instant, Ning Yechen disappeared from the sky. Inside the Luo Temple, in a study room, a middle-aged man with a calm face was sitting in the study, holding a book in his hand and reading it attentively. At this moment, as the lights in the room swayed gently, Luo Tianya's pupils shrank sharply, his expression showing horror. Because he noticed that there was already a person standing in the darkness behind him. And as an immortal, he didn't notice the other party's arrival at all. If the other party hadn't taken the initiative to stop concealing his aura, he wouldn't have even noticed it. After Luo Tianya came to his senses, he gently closed the book and put it down. He said a faint greeting without looking back. Your Excellency, no. Lord Demon Lord's late-night visit is really an honor for me, Luo Temple. Combining the opponent's strength and the recent rumors of the Demon Lord, Luo Tianya guessed the identity of the person. Ning Yechen no longer concealed anything, walked out from behind Luo Tianya, walked to him, took a chair and sat down. Luo Tianya had no intention of resisting at all, and had no intention of calling anyone. Because he knew that facing the Demon Lord, it was impossible for the entire Luo Temple to resist at all. Master Demon Lord is here to destroy our Luo Temple. Luo Tianya asked bluntly, seeming to be ready for everything. It depends on your answer later. Ning Yechen crossed his legs, frowned, stared at Luo Tianya with cold eyes and said calmly. These words also showed in disguise that things could turn around. Luo Tianya couldn't help but feel a little hope in his heart, and he took the initiative to apologize. I wonder where the little girl in the family offended Lord Demon Lord. We, the Luo Temple, are willing to do our best to compensate Lord Demon Lord. Well, she wasn't offended, but you were offended by me. Ning Yechen pointed at Luo Tianya and said coldly. Luo Tianya frowned slightly, and even after thinking about it, he couldn't figure out where in the Luo Temple he had offended the Demon Lord. It was even the first time for them to meet. Please also ask Lord Demon to make it clear. Luo Tianya asked in confusion. He thought for a long time, but he really had no idea where he had offended the Demon Lord. I ask you, are you sending people to hunt down Ruiying? Ning Yechen stared slightly and asked in a cold voice. Luo Tianya frowned, his expression becoming more and more doubtful. Lord Demon Lord, are you kidding me? Ruiying is my daughter, why should I send someone to kill her? Wasn't it his instigation? Ning Yechen was also confused after hearing this, and looked at Luo Tianya carefully. Seeing that his breath was calm, his eyes were full of confusion, and his expression was the same, it didn't seem like he was lying. Could it be that it wasn't Luo Shen who was chasing Luo Ruiying? At this time Luo Tianya also opened his mouth to explain. Although I don't know why Lord Demon Lord you were looking for my little girl, she was taken away by a certain force more than 100 years ago. I haven't seen her since she was taken away. She has never returned to Luo Temple. What is the name of the force that took her away? Ning Yechen asked in a solemn voice. Since it wasn't Luo Shen who did it, it must be the one who took away her power. Luo Tianya shook his head. I don't know who the other party is either. I only know that the other party's power is very powerful, far beyond what our Luo Temple can contend with. Even the Bingxia Sanctuary of the Beiming Immortal Realm does not dare to offend easily. The other party said that my daughter is very talented and will become an empress in the future. After giving me many benefits in the Luo Temple, he took her away. The Bingxia Sanctuary is one of the top sects in the 9 immortal realms. It is as famous as the Tiandao Imperial Palace. Even the Bingxia Sanctuary does not dare to offend easily. It can only be those ancient clans that have been hidden in the immortal world for thousands of years. Those dead old guys usually hide somewhere in the fairy world. Unless there is a disaster of annihilation in the fairy world, usually those dead old guys will not show up, let alone interfere with anything. But a pursuit order was issued for Luo Ruiying. The immortal realm is vast and claims to accommodate the heaven, earth, hundreds of rivers, the sun, the moon and the stars. It is 100 times larger than the human world. Finding those ancient clans is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Even if he is found, it may not be the clan that is chasing Luo Ruiying. Ning Yechen had a very unhappy and impatient look on his face. His wife's situation is more complicated than he imagined. However, the fact that his wife can be favored by those old guys also shows that his wife's talent is extraordinary. Otherwise, he would never be favored by those ancient hidden clans. Seeing Ning Yechen's unhappy face, Luo Tianya plucked up the courage to ask worriedly. I wonder if Lord Demon Lord has ever seen my little girl. How is she now? Through the conversation with Ning Yechen, he found that he felt that the Demon Lord was indeed here to punish the enemy, but it felt like he was here to vent his anger on Luo Ruiying. And it seems that the Demon Lord and his little daughter should know each other. It sounds like his daughter is still being hunted. As a father, for the sake of the family's future, he had no choice but to hand over his daughter more than 100 years ago, but this became the thing he regretted the most. Now he has no idea whether his daughter is dead or alive. Hearing Luo Tianya's inquiry, Ning Yechen came back to his senses, quickly put away his legs and feet, and sat upright. His face also changed from the cold and arrogant look just now, and became a kind and friendly smile. There is a hint of flattery in the smile. I didn't know when I first came here that I was preparing to take over the Luotian temple, so I took on the attitude of being a demon lord before. Now that I knew it was a misunderstanding, I quickly restrained myself. After all, the other party is his wife's father, his father-in-law. He crossed his legs and frowned. How rude. You have to leave a good impression. At this time, Ning Yechen was extremely glad that he had not rashly destroyed the entire Luo temple just now. If this is really destroyed, something big will happen. Ahem, you. No, the Lord of Luo Temple, your daughter is fine now, you don't have to worry. Ning Yechen coughed lightly and said politely with a smile. This attitude is a complete 180-degree turn from just now. Luo Tianya looked confused, and his heart was extremely wary. Why did this demon lord change his attitude so suddenly? He was startled. Lord Demon Lord. Hey, Lord Luo Temple, there's no need to call me Demon Lord, I'm so unfamiliar. My real name is Ning Yechen. The Lord of Luo Temple can just call me Yechen. As soon as Luo Tianya opened his mouth, Ning Yechen raised his hand to interrupt, with a friendly smile on his face. This only made Luo Tianya feel even more uneasy. The Demon Lord actually wanted him to call him by his name. This has never happened in the entire fairy world, right? How many people dare to call the Demon Lord his real name? Yi, Yechen, Luo Tianya cautiously called. Yes, Master of Luo Temple, please tell me. Ning Yechen smiled contentedly. Well, isn't the relationship between this son-in-law and his father-in-law one step closer? It's just that it's not easy for him to tell him about his relationship with Luo Ruiying now. At least he has to wait until Luo Ruiying accepts his identity before finding a suitable time to announce it. Luo Tianya was very afraid of Ning Yechen's sudden flattering attitude, but at the moment he was more worried about the condition of his daughter Luo Ruiying. So I could only bite the bullet and ask. You must have met my little girl, right? I wonder how my little girl is doing now and where she is. She's really fine now, you don't have to worry. As for where she is, I won't tell you for the time being. Ning Yechen thought for a while and had no intention of telling Luo Tianya about Luo Ruiying. In order not to worry him, he didn't say anything even if Luo Ruiying had her heart and bones ripped out. On the one hand, he was afraid that Luo Tianya would be even more worried when he found out that Luo Ruiying was with him, and now was not the time to tell him. On the other hand, if you tell him, it may lead to the crisis of annihilation of the Luo Temple. If the mysterious hidden clan behind Luo Ruiying wanted to destroy the Luo Temple, it would be effortless. Luo Ruiying knew this very well, so even if she escaped, she had no intention of escaping back to Luo Temple, and she didn't even say to meet him. He was just afraid that the mysterious clan force would find out about it and bring disaster to the family. That's why he made the decisive choice to escape to the human world. Luo Tianya was still worried and wanted to ask more questions, but Ning Yeshan didn't give him another chance. He stood up and disappeared from his eyes like a cloud of smoke. Now that he has learned that the pursuit was not ordered by the Luotian temple, there is no use for him to stay here any longer. It's a bit difficult to find the real culprit behind the scenes. Then we can only wait for the other party to come to the door again. Digging out his wife's immortal bones and heart is not something that can be done like this. After Luo Tianya watched Ning Yechan leave, he did not breathe a sigh of relief, but looked extremely serious. How did Ruiying get to know the Demon Lord? Demon Lord even went to the fairy world to find out about her. What happened to her and why was she being hunted? Intuition told Luo Tianya that something must have happened to his daughter Luo Ruiying. No, he can't sit here and wait for death. Luo Tianya looked solemn and shouted loudly outside the house. Somebody come. Late at night, in the demon forest, inside the wooden house. Due to overdraft of spiritual power, Luo Ruiying fell into a drowsy state for a period of time before waking up leisurely. As soon as she opened her eyes, Luo Ruiying saw Luo Hongye curled up in her arms. Looking at Luo Hongye's sleeping face peacefully, Luo Ruiying felt relieved, smiled lovingly, and reached out to gently caress her cheek. Then when she was about to look for Ning Yechan, she suddenly noticed a pair of arms tightly hugging her waist. Luo Ruiying was startled, a trace of panic flashed across her face, and she turned around, only to find that Ning Yechan was sleeping soundly in her arms. The person sleeping in the middle at this time was not Luo Hongye, but her. Moreover, she was sleeping on her side, and Ning Yechan's body was close to hers. She could even clearly feel the warmth against her back, and his warm breath drifting past her ears while he was sleeping. No, it's so close. Luo Ruiying's face couldn't help but blush, and she tried to gently take away Ning Yechan's hands from her waist. Unfortunately, Ning Yechan's hands were held tightly and she couldn't take them away at all. Why is this guy hugging him so tightly even when he's asleep? Luo Ruiying turned around and glared at Ning Yechan, then tried to twist her body out of his arms. However, because Luo Hongye was lying in her arms, Luo Ruiying was worried that she would startle her, so she did not dare to twist too much. This also made it impossible to break away from Ning Yechan's embrace. Instead, her own body kept rubbing gently with Ning Yechan, and her body couldn't help but feel a little warm. But at this moment, Ning Yechan's feet were placed on her body again, and his body was closer. Ah! In the darkness, the hand on her waist suddenly pinched slightly. Luo Ruiying instantly turned red, looked panicked, and almost screamed. Fortunately, I covered my mouth in time to prevent any misleading moans. She couldn't make strange noises while the baby was still sleeping in her arms. This guy is really. The sleeping position is really bad. My hands are not honest. Luo Ruiying was ashamed and angry at the moment, but she couldn't force her way out of Ning Yechan's arms. At her wit's end, Luo Ruiying could only blush and try to call out softly. Yi, Yechan, Yechan, you, wake up. Luo Ruiying called several times, but didn't get any response. This guy slept too hard. Can't wake up at all. After several attempts, Luo Ruiying accepted her fate and let Ning Yechan sleep next to her. Just hold it, as long as he doesn't act weird anymore. Just like that, Luo Ruiying placed her hands on Ning Yechan's hands on her waist, snuggled into his arms and fell into a deep sleep. The corners of Ning Yechan's mouth raised slightly while sleeping. In the early morning, the morning sun shines into the house through the cracks in the windows. Madam, Luo Ruiying, who was sleeping soundly, heard a familiar call in her ears. Luo Ruiying slowly opened her sleepy eyes, and what she saw was a handsome face in front of hers, which scared her so much that she subconsciously leaned back. Thinking of Ning Yechan's dishonest behavior in sleeping last night, Luo Ruiying couldn't help but show resentment on her face and her cheeks turned slightly red. This guy made her unable to sleep well last night. I actually slept well last night. Ning Yechan smiled slightly, sat on the edge of the bed, stretched out his hand to touch Luo Ruiying's forehead, and asked softly. Madam, do you still feel pain? It's okay. Ning Yechen's soft words of concern made Luo Ruiying feel warmer, and the words she originally wanted to say to him were swallowed silently. Never mind. No wonder he fell asleep. Madam, my husband has prepared some medicine for you. Ning Yechen brought a bowl of medicinal soup to nourish the body, scooped it up and fed it to Luo Ruiying's mouth as usual. This time Luo Ruiying didn't stubbornly ask to eat by herself, but obediently opened her mouth and took the spoon. Because only if she recovers her body early can she prevent possible dangers that may arise later. Ning Yechen happily fed a spoonful into Luo Ruiying's mouth. Although he could easily heal all of Luo Ruiying's injuries, he did not choose to do so. On the one hand, it is easy to arouse Luo Ruiying's suspicion. It is easy to make medicinal porridge, but if he takes out pills or something, his identity cannot be concealed. On the other hand, it is very endearing to see Luo Ruiying show her soft and charming side because of her weakness. He could also take the opportunity to take care of her when she was weak. After Luo Ruiying drank a few sips of the medicine, she pondered for a moment and suddenly said to Ning Yechen, "Yi Chen, pack your things later and let's get out of here." This was not her momentary thought, but a plan after repeated consideration. The ghost husband and others are chasing her here, which means that her location may have been exposed. The other party may send more powerful enemies soon. With her current level of cultivation, she couldn't even stop the ghost husband and others, let alone other more powerful enemies. The safest way is to leave here quickly before the enemy comes. Ning Yechen knew Luo Ruiying's plans and worries. Although her worries were completely unnecessary, he still nodded according to her wishes. He chose to live in seclusion here in order to spend ordinary days happily. Now that he has a wife and children, he will naturally be wherever his wife and children go. After the two discussed it, they started packing their luggage and preparing to leave. Luo Ruiying also has a spare spiritual ring in her hand. Although there is nothing in it, it is the best way to store things now. With just a wave of her arm, most of the luggage in the room was stored in her spiritual ring. "Oh, my wife is so amazing." Ning Yechen clapped his hands and praised. "If you have anything to pack, leave it to me," Luo Ruiying said with a smile. It was obviously just a simple storage of the spiritual ring, but after being praised by Ning Yechen, I felt a little happy for some reason. After Luo Hongye woke up, she also walked around the house happily helping to pack things. "Madam, I'm going to pack things outside the house." "Good." Ning Yechen looked at Luo Ruiying and her daughter, smiled slightly, found an excuse and left the room, and secretly sent a message to call the 3 Chaos Demon cows. "I'm going to leave here for a while. I'll give you two choices. One is to stay here and help me take care of everything here, and the other is to follow me and leave. You can choose for yourself." Ning Yechen looked at the 3 Chaos Demonic cows and said calmly, "It would be good to let the 3 of them stay here to help him guard the house and medicine garden. It would also be good to take them with him under disguise and let them secretly protect Luo Ruiying and the others." The 3 Chaos Demonic cows looked at each other and already had a decision in their hearts. "Sir, please let us follow you. We are willing to serve you to the death." If it were before, they would definitely choose to stay in the demon forest and continue to be their demon king. But after helping them achieve a breakthrough in cultivation last time and giving them immortal weapons, they changed their minds. Although it is dangerous and scary to be around adults, it is also a rare opportunity. In the woods, Luo Ruiying hugged Ning Yechen and quickly jumped over the woods, while Luo Hongye was wrapped in swaddling clothes and carried behind her. In order to leave the forest more quickly and efficiently, Luo Ruiying simply carried Ning Yechen into her arms like a princess, and flew directly over the forest on her way. Ning Yechen originally wanted to ask Luo Ruiying to let him down, and they could just walk slowly from below. But the feeling of being held in his arms was so comfortable that he gave up the idea. As Luo Ruiying hurried on, she looked around the woods with vigilant eyes, guarding against attacks from enemies or monsters. The strange thing is that before she came, she could sense the auras of many monsters in the woods, but now she no longer felt any aura of monsters. The monsters seemed to have left. Even if the monster's breath is sensed from a distance, the monster's breath will immediately disappear and run away. She didn't exert any coercive aura, but as soon as she got closer, those monsters would immediately hide away. Seems a little strange, but what was so strange about Luo Ruiying was that she couldn't explain. Mom, Dad, are we leaving here again? Luo Hongye, who was lying on Luo Rying's back, raised her head and reluctantly asked in Luo Rying's ear. Since leaving that dark place, Luo Ruiying took her to many places, and each time she stayed there for only a short time. Same thing this time, but this time with her father here, she really liked the cabin in the woods. Ning Yechen reached out and rubbed Luo Hongye's little head comfortingly, and said softly. Yay, Dad and Mother are going to take Ye on a trip. There will be a lot of delicious food and a lot of fun there. Fun, delicious. When Luo Hongye heard this, her big eyes lit up, and a look of yearning instantly appeared on her face. Can I eat it every night? Certainly, our family can eat whatever they want every night. Ning Yechen promised swornly. Yeah, then I will travel with my parents every night. Luo Hongye's face blossomed with joy, and her hands and feet danced happily. Luo Ruiying looked helplessly and lovingly at the father and daughter in her arms, and whispered in Ning Yechen's ear. You dote on her too much. Huh, isn't it good? Or are you jealous, madam? Ning Yechen looked at Luo Ruiying with a smile and asked. Luo Ruiying's cheeks turned red and she rolled her eyes at Ning Yechen. That was not what I meant. What is this guy thinking? He always says these frivolous words with a straight face, be careful if she throws him out of the sky. How could she be jealous of her own child? The corners of Ning Yechen's mouth raised slightly, and suddenly he put his arm around Luo Ruiying's waist and crawled into her arms. Luo Ruiying was startled and asked quietly. You, what are you doing? Madam, my husband is actually very afraid of heights. I feel a little uncomfortable now, and I can only feel at ease by holding my wife. Ning Yechen said seriously. After saying that, he looked uncomfortable, closed his eyes, and leaned his head on Luo Ruiying's chest. Soft and fragrant. Is this guy really afraid of heights? Why didn't I hear him say that last time? Luo Ruiying's cheeks were red with embarrassment. She pursed her red lips and looked down at Ning Yechen in her arms, expressing doubts in her heart. I haven't said anything after flying for so long, but now I suddenly feel dizzy and afraid of heights. Luo Hongye looked at Ning Yechen and Luo Ruiying with wide eyes curiously. From the beginning, my father has been whispering to my mother. With the child staring at her all the time, Luo Ruiying was embarrassed to push Ning Yechen away from her arms. What if he might actually be afraid of heights and feel dizzy? How about, I let you down and take a rest first? Luo Ruiying expressed concern towards Ning Yechen in her arms. No, just keep it like this, madam. Ning Yechen replied without opening his eyes. Luo Ruiying suddenly felt that this guy must be pretending on purpose. However, at this moment, Ning Yechen suddenly opened his eyes quietly and changed his words. Madam, it's better to leave your husband alone for now. Okay. Luo Ruiying hurriedly fell from the air and expressed concern again. It doesn't matter to you, right? It's okay, I just want to go to the toilet. Ning Yechen scratched his head and said with an embarrassed look. When Luo Ruiying heard this, her cheeks turned red involuntarily, and she asked in a low voice. Would you like me to go with you? Ning Yechen's eyes widened in shock. What does it mean? He just wanted to find an excuse to get away from her temporarily, but she said she wanted to go to the bathroom with him. Luo Ruiying also felt that what she just said seemed a bit easy to misunderstand, so she hurriedly explained in a panic. I didn't mean that. You must not misunderstand. I'm worried about monsters and wild beasts in the woods, and I don't worry about you being alone. That's how it turns out. It really shocked him. Ning Yechen suddenly realized that he almost thought his wife was unexpectedly bold. Don't worry, madam, you can be alone for your husband. Just wait here for me with your child. Come as soon as you go for your husband. Ning Yechen smiled and waved, then slipped into the bushes. Although Luo Ruiying was still a little worried, she was really embarrassed to follow him. After sensing that there were no auras of wild beasts or monsters around, he obediently waited where he was. After entering the woods alone, Ning Yechen put away the smile on his face and frowned slightly. He sensed a familiar aura that had lasted for more than 100 years. That aura is lurking 100 miles ahead. It seems to be waiting for them. The 3 chaos demonic cows will not even be opponents of each other. It seems that he can only solve it himself. What he hates most is someone interrupting the time he spends with his wife and children. If he has to leave his wife's warm embrace, you are doomed. Ning Yechen teleported to the woods 100 miles away and said coldly to the surroundings. Get out of here, everyone. The surrounding woods were completely silent, with no response from the slightest movement. Ha, don't you dare come out. Then I will help you. Ning Yechen's expression condensed, and he reached out and inserted his hand into the void. The void was like a mirror, creating a crack as his palm was inserted, and the surrounding void was shattered. Ning Yechen pinched a man with strange black lines on his face and slowly pulled him out of the crack in the void. The man looked horrified and kept struggling with his limbs. He couldn't believe that he could be found hiding in the cracks in the void. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.